with NiKo as the in-game leader, and that's going to be a whole different topic, I'm sure later on with you guys. But you're not going to treat him like, I don't know, Handen. Like, I'm not going to bother him with watching 100 demos every day and just focusing solely on that. Like, that's a player you want him to still have a good amount of impact individually, right? You want to have him still be comfortable with his own game and still be able to make plays and just win you important rounds based off of skill.
Yo, what up, internet? It's the Counter-Strike pot. I don't know what I'm doing, guys. I've lost the bloody mind. That's one of the most interesting intros I think I've ever gone for. So let's pretend that didn't happen, and I'll do my same bullshit, and we'll pretend I did. And this is episode 17 of HLTV Confirmed, brought to you by Extrafy. Anyway, we've got that out the way. The intro's done. Let's keep her rolling. Today's show, if you're just tuning in, we have a special guest. It's JaCkz. I'll introduce him soon. You can see his lovely face. All good there. We're going to be jumping into some news. There's Henny. Apparently some bullshit going on with FURIA. GODSENT, we already spoken about them, but we'll talk some more. Chaos, North America in meltdown, basically. We've got EG not coming over to Europe now for whatever reason, and IEM, there's Flashpoint going on, Blast happening. We'll talk about all those bits and bobs on today's show, but we've got to introduce the regulars. Lucas, the producer, has not slept. I don't know if that means he's getting paid per the hour and he's just going for a crazy one. But Lucas, what are you going to be all right?
Yeah. If I fall asleep, don't wake me up. Just let the stream run out.
All right, cool. Just as long as we all leave TeamSpeak before we start talking shit, then we're good.
But leaving TeamSpeak.
Yeah, that's one way to deal with it. Striker, how was commentating Counter-Strike, mate?
Dude, I literally just learned what your life looks like when you work for Star Series.
You hate yourself yet, or?
I had a 17-hour day on Friday.
Okay. So you're getting the well, that's how it was in 2016 when I came in. Before then, it was even worse. So I guess you got it all right. Who we got? Prof, of course. Prof. If you could pick one piece of relationship advice for all of our viewers, what would you say?
Never compromise.
Wow.
He was ready for that.
Okay.
He was speed dating or something for sure, man.
No, I mean, that's like the inverse of all of the relationship advice people always give you. So
okay. Yeah. Don't take that advice, guys. Now, before we introduce the star of the show here today, Lucas, roll the bumper and we'll get stuck in. And of course, it is none other. Let's try again. It is none other.
Probably is English in some way.
Some way. I'm good at mumbling, but regardless, we're doing the hot seat, and we have JaCkz here. And JaCkz, I always wanted to do this. I always was hoping, and Alex probably did it. I just wouldn't have been listening. But I always wanted him to introduce you as JaCkz YNK Pounder Bitch. Like I thought
all the time.
Did he?
All the time. Yeah. Oh no, actually, I don't think it was James Bartolf. Bartolf was doing this all the time. This was like his, thing. I don't know. Alex probably snuck it in or something, like a couple of times, but yeah.
All right. Well, I think the place to kick off today is what have you been up to in the last, what has it been, about a month now?
Yeah. Well, as you are aware, Chad, but probably a few other people, I was supposed to do IM Beijing as talent, but when I went to do my test for COVID, it turned back positive. So I had to self-isolate myself. I was in quarantine for 2 weeks. I had, just the kind of mild symptoms, thankfully. So that ruined that opportunity to hang out with you and Alex. And sorry for leaving you two guys alone. But that was the initial plan. Other than that, not too much. I moved to a new place. You know, I've just been taking it easy with everything, just kind of relaxing. Not too much. You know, it's like life's pretty weird with COVID. I'm sure in every country, wherever you are. So it's not too different here in Serbia. So just been managing, jumping through the hoops with everything that's been going on.
Okay. Well, you sound good. You look good. So I assume everything is
I
good.
feel good as well. You know, that's usually how it goes.
Well, you were just telling me the gyms are still open in Serbia. It's like, man, it sounds like things are still kind of normal, at least a little bit. But let's kind of fast forward to the meat of this sandwich, because I'm sure that there's a lot of people who are very interested in what kind of went on in FaZe, and more importantly, let's start with why you left, and then I guess that'll have you working back through all of the issues or the life decisions you've been looking at.
Yeah, I think there were well pretty much like two main reasons. And it's not that NiKo is he's my friend and he left and I left right behind him. I did that more because of the team and for the org, because I figured, you know, if I wanted to leave, that's the best time, since they can get a new pair of coach plus in-game leader to have a fresh start. But for me, it was mostly just being dissatisfied with the org on one side of things, and having some long-standing issues with some of the players, in a sense of I didn't like the level of their effort. I didn't like the level of their commitment. The work ethic has dropped off, and I tried in different ways and multiple times to, you know, change that, like to have them work on it, to improve, to understand the importance of it. I got the org involved at some point as well in some of those issues, and things still really didn't change. So I just didn't really feel like I could keep working with some of the players on the team, because what I was trying to do didn't really have an effect. And in an environment like that, with those two factors combined, it just wasn't it wasn't an environment in which I wanted to be in. And I'm in a little bit of a unique position, unlike most other coaches, where I don't have to be a coach. I have other things that I can do, whether it's involved with Counter-Strike or esports or whatever it is. And I just, for the last maybe couple of months, I also felt like my personal motivation to keep working on these issues has started to drop down. And I feel like I'm not a person that's going to linger around when I'm not giving 110%, because FaZe is a organization and the team was that where you are trying to be the best in the world. It's number one or bust, and in order to achieve that, you need to give 110% all the time. You need to do all the extra little things that don't maybe necessarily even fall under your job description. So when I noticed that with myself as well, is when I started seriously considering, do I want to keep doing this? And there was a scenario in which I would have probably stayed with the org, but it wasn't really feasible, I don't think, for all of those circumstances to come together in a scenario in which I would remain the coach of FaZe Clan.
All right, well, there's a bit to unpack there. I think if we stick with like the team-based elements to begin with, before we talk like the org and all that, like when you guys kicked off this year, everything was looking like pretty sweet, at least from my standpoint, right? I remember watching you guys, I think it was BLAST, very early on in the year, and it felt like you guys had like you quite well drilled in terms of the strategies. Everyone was on point. It felt like all the players were buying in. Was it like the same bullshit as that happened in the past, with like just a different player? Obviously, Olof stepping down again for an indefinite period of time. That throws everything into chaos. Is that when all the motivation and everything kind of got sucked away and it became really difficult, or was it even before then?
For me, definitely not. I think that what you mentioned there, I think that's the story of my time with FaZe for the whole tenure. We get rolling and then something happens and we are set like 5 steps back and need to start doing things all over again. And we felt really good at the beginning of the year. Obviously, we didn't make the playoffs in Katowice. We had a great showing at BLAST. In Katowice, we lost 2 times to NAVI in a really close series, to a NAVI which went on and just crushed everyone in the playoffs and dominated the whole tournament. And it was just one of those things where, you know, it was one of the few times where after a series I felt like we just like got beaten by a better team, you know, like they were just really playing really well that tournament. I think we were playing great in that series as well, and they just had the upper hand. So we were all feeling really good about the future, just to keep working on those small things, and the issues didn't arise from there. I think for the problems came with, you know, COVID and everything, having to stay at home and just not being able to travel. I still, from the last time I saw my players as a unit was in Katowice. Like we weren't able to do a single boot camp. We weren't able to get together outside of seeing, you know, Cold and NiKo, because they're obviously living in the same city as I am. But it's just, it really takes a toll on you just being in the same environment, just behind your PC day in and day out. The tournament organizers, to be honest, didn't help increasing the amount of games with their formats. You know, playing 10 or 11 best of threes in 14 days, while not being able to leave your home because of curfew after 5 p.m. can really take a mental toll. That's been a big struggle for myself, and I'm sure some of the players as well. But you know, I think the olof thing really did hurt us, because it came at a moment where, first of all, it's impossible to replace a player like olof Meister. You know, unless you get another really blue chip player, you know, someone like Rops, or I don't know, you know, Hunter, or maybe even a guy like JaCkz, right? But you can't do this in the middle of the season, where this gets dropped on you like a bomb, like out of nowhere. The best thing you can do is just find a stand-in, and then look at the future and the next player break, and see how you can mold the team after that. olof is just such an amazing player, extremely cerebral player. I personally wasn't surprised that he was doing well with FaZe when he came as a stand-in, because he is just so intelligent when it comes to the game, so good at understanding when to make plays, when to create space, that he doesn't need to be, you know, in a great shape mechanically to still be able to help the team. So we knew that was going to be a struggle, but I think it was mostly at the player break right after that, where we had an opportunity to get Alex, which was something that the whole team was really excited about, me and NiKo especially, because he started getting, you know, really exhausted by the whole in-game leading thing, getting a little bit frustrated by some of the losses as well. And it didn't feel like it was a hard deal to get done. It just didn't get done for reasons really that I can't tell you right now. And then again, we were put in a position where in the last minute we had to fend for ourselves in a way, and find some, because it's, you know, you're expecting to get an in-game leader. Now you know you can't get one, so now your whole player search changes, right? So now you're like, okay, so NiKo still has to in-game lead, so now we need to get someone back to replace olof, which is again a difficult role. You need someone who at least has some experience and so on. And that's when we went with Kirby, but that brought some other issues, in terms of not being able to start right after the player break with practicing. We wanted to do a boot camp before Cologne, and all of that stuff. Everything fell apart when it came to that, and we just got off on really the wrong foot for the second part of the season. And almost up until New York, we weren't really doing great, and the atmosphere wasn't great either within the lineup.
Oh, okay, props, JaCkz. You got anything on this through the team?
A lot to unpack, as you said.
Yeah.
I guess one of the things that is kind of talked about, but not that much, about the whole situation is like the FaZe's involvement in the CSGO roster. I don't know about other rosters because I don't care, to be honest. But especially in the time where we have these like Cloud9s, the G2s, when complexities where people are super involved, it seems like FaZe really are the team that they show up and they buy out Coldzera, and then they are nowhere to like help you guys when you obviously needed a new player. So can you tell me, can you explain like what the deal is there and why you couldn't get these players when you wanted them, right?
I don't think I can explain that. What I can say is that for some things, like there weren't really any issues, you know. Like it's difficult to get a player like Olo, obviously, like to get that whole thing done. Even though that deal also took a long while to get done. And for example, whenever we wanted to do a boot camp, the organization made it possible and everything like that. That main stuff was getting done, but I just, in my opinion, you need more to be able to, you know, compete properly today. There was there was no access to software. There was no support staff in terms of analyst or sports psychologist or anything along those lines. It was the 5 players and myself, and that was it when it came to the team. And I'm not sure if there's a team in the top 10 that doesn't have some of the things that I said towards I think the end of last year. I think we started we agreed to bring Robin, the manager, to some of the tournaments because he's just like a great guy all around, and he's known some of the players way longer than me. And they also said, you know, just helps to have a good atmosphere, good chemistry. So we did that. I don't know if that counts for anything, but I just like that was a part of the problem, at least in my opinion, because, you know, with NiKo as the in-game leader, and that's going to be a whole different topic, I'm sure later on with you guys. But you're not going to treat him like, I don't know, Handen. You know, like I'm not going to bother him with watching 100 demos every day and just focusing solely on that. Like that's a player you want him to still have a good amount of impact individually, right? You want to have him still be comfortable with his own game and still be able to make plays and, you know, just win you important rounds based off of skill. So you take a bit of extra work on that. You need to prepare for your opponents. You need to work with players individually on their development, and, you know, make sure you remind them that they need to keep changing things up so that they're not too one-dimensional. It's like there's just a lot of things to be done there. And as I said, it didn't help that the amount of games increased, and there just wasn't like that much time. So I definitely did feel like we got stretched a little bit too thin with all of that, and trying to do all of those things ended up maybe not being able to do some of them up to the level that, you know, was required to just have better results and maybe win a couple of more tournaments.
You were talking about you know, there being certain moves that that could have been made for you to stay in FaZe. I suppose this mainly means roster changes, or like, you know, bringing a certain player.
Well, it means 2 things. It means going into more of a bigger rebuild of the lineup, like changing more players in a scenario in which then I would try to bring Dexter from Renegades as an in-game leader. I mean, this wasn't anything that was nothing was being done. This was just like me in my head, and also like talking, saying like, I think this guy deserves a chance, you know, because like in that situation we would need an in-game leader, and I would rather give someone new a chance. And I also, you know, watched some of the games, how they played. I watched him individually and I just liked it. With him, like maybe getting, because you would obviously have some cash from NiKo, you could try and get someone like JaCkz, or because they would match culturally. This was also before JaCkz got picked up by Complexity, and then that was like the duo that I wanted to get. And then the 5th player would still probably be in the open. And with the organization, it was just, you know, getting more help. And to be fair, in September this year, they did come to me and saying, hey, are the players like experiencing mental burnout? When this became a kind of more, I guess, public or topic, just like more in the public's eye. And that's when they discussed a little bit with me, okay, so would you like to have a sports psychologist or this or that? I said, just like, you know, a year ago, I think we need all of this. I think and outside of just FaZe and everything, my personal opinion is if you need to get one thing for your team outside of a coach, it's a sports psychologist, a mental coach, however you call it. I think that's the one single thing that can help you most. At least, well, I'm maybe a bit biased because I've been dealing with already established players, like older players who are not used to coaching as much, and maybe working in an organized structure within an organization, or even just playing under a coach. But maybe it's not, what I'm trying to say is maybe it's not as big of a problem with younger players. But I think for my teams, I had it in my BR, but I think for FaZe that would have been the single most helpful thing to kind of increase performance, so to speak.
Right. So just with those things you're talking about regarding not getting that communication, well, not you're getting the communication, but you're obviously just hitting a dead end. Were you the one responsible with talking to the FaZe management? Like, was that not Robin's job as the CSGO manager? I don't understand the structure in these orgs, right? So was it kind of you just left up to your own devices to try and fix these things on your own?
Well, it's not really. It wasn't really super set. I wasn't really contacted too often by more or less anyone. Like, I had most interaction with Robin. Obviously, he's the manager. Everyday stuff like flights, or if it happens somewhere, which also was rare, that we had some obligations like sponsorship wise, like stuff like that. But there wasn't really too much going on in terms of, hey, how are things going, or this or that, or why did this result happen here, whether it's good or bad. So I had early on a couple of conversations like that, but when I realized to an extent that this wasn't really going to be a thing, then I'm not going to focus on things that I cannot change. So I'm just going to focus on things that I can affect, and just focus more on the team and try to figure out a way to still be efficient with what I have at my disposal.
I want to move on to the talking about the inability to get the in-game leaders. Is there anything you guys want to cover here, Striker and Prof, before we jump into that one?
Go ahead.
Let's
All right.
go.
So with this one here, you joined back at the same time as I believe Adren was standing in, right? So when that was all announced, it was early 2019. Was it on the agenda since your point of joining to try and get an in-game leader? Like, did you think that needed to happen pretty much immediately?
When I talked to the team, first thing I tried to get them to keep karrigan, because I knew that it was really difficult to get a good in-game leader, and I just thought that I knew he had his flaws, but I thought that he just needed some help, and I thought that me working with him, like, I could get him over that hump maybe. But I also understand when a team is just can't play with some player anymore, and that's just something you cannot affect. They're just done with a certain person on the roster for whatever reason. So we moved on, and I think the initial plan was to try and get Exist after the Katowice major, because they played with him
In the
Sydney,
summer,
right?
as a sub,
yeah.
instead of olof. It's one of the tournaments. I wasn't excited about that, to be honest, because I mean, for me, Exist was the in-game leader of NIP, who was dominant not because they were doing, I don't know, something special, but they were just individually much better than anyone at the time. But I was willing to potentially give it a chance if that could even happen. It didn't, because I think Fnatic started playing better, so he would stay with the lineup, something along those lines. But again, after Katowice, we had a bad tournament at Shanghai Star Series. Then we won Blast. We beat everyone pretty easily in our Pro League group, which was on LAN. And then we went to Sydney, where we felt really good. Like, we started playing much, much better. Players got some confidence as well. And that was when NiKo couldn't get his visa, so I had to play the tournament. Like, that tournament, we felt like probably the only team that could beat us was Team Liquid, so we couldn't show up there. Then Adren got some other offers, and his situation was also in flux this whole time. So he basically just felt like he wanted to go somewhere where he could be a proper full-time member of the team. And that's when we started discussing, okay, let's try to get an in-game leader. But I mean, at that time, it was really, the names that were on our list were obviously Neo, which we ended up playing with, Pronax, Snappy, We tried to get Flasha. He didn't want to join. I think this was even before. I can't remember if he joined Cloud9 at the start of the year or before. I'm not exactly sure about the timeline, but I know
I think he was on the
him.
break then, probably, because
Yeah,
he,
and that
after
was,
Katowice he took the break because
yeah,
of that, like the family
yeah. So
stuff.
that's probably when we reached out to him and to see like if even in some point in the future, we would play with a stand-in if he would join in the future. That was he declined that. So between the choices that we had, we went with Neo in a sense of that we felt like, okay, the firepower is probably there, so it wouldn't be a huge issue. Let's just get someone so we can, unleash NiKo more and stuff. So we did get an in-game leader, and that was probably the worst that we've played in that lineup. Just to be clear, this is not Neo's fault, only and anything like that. It's just like that combination of players and trying to, get those styles mixed up just didn't really pan out for us. And I think that was also NiKo's individually worst period statistically as well when he didn't in-game lead. And if I can, I think the main mistake we made as a team probably was, I mean, in hindsight, right? Like hindsight is always 2020. That after the Berlin major, we didn't shuffle the team in a different way, right? By that I mean mostly not kind of taking a bit of a gamble. Now it doesn't sound like a gamble, but at the time for us it did feel like it, like going for either blame or Aleksib after that major because they were both available at the time, and we just didn't, some of the things when we talked to other players or some of the things we heard and so on. In one case, in other case, maybe just not seeing enough in terms of achievements, so that we feel like, again, this might sound funny, but you need to understand it from the context of our team and who are we playing for. Like that's I think I said this in some other interviews. Like FaZe is like, at least in my head, it always was like the Real Madrid of CS, right? Like you don't go there and get some unknown player and then you develop him and you give him a chance. No, like someone else does that, and then you bring him in and you have this like superstar team, or a team at least of established players already, and you go to be number one. And that's why it's you're the best or you're a bust, right? With some other teams, you can say, oh, they're top 4, it's fine. They're top 10, it's fine. With FaZe, it's not. Like you're either number one or, nothing else really matters. You can see that from the only time we were mentioned on social media of the official FaZe clan accounts was when we were in the final. So it's just like in that sort of a environment, you feel hesitant to take risks when it comes to roster moves. And now you're gonna ask me, well, you got Brocky. Well, if you're gonna get cold, which costs a lot of money, you can't really afford another player. So we had to do it that way. And like it turned out way better than we could have ever hoped for. Like Brocky turned out to be a great player for us, especially because we changed his roles as well. We moved him around a little bit, and I think it's obvious now that he's been doing a great job for FaZe.
Okay, so with that whole, so it's over quite a large period of time here, and I guess that from what I've learned recently, it still feels like a lot of these like roster moves and stuff. There's like it used to be back in everybody's local scene, like how you were chatting to people on Steam Friends about like but now there's just contracts in the way, right? So like you don't have to give away all the names here, but how many different like in-game leaders do you think you probably had, not at the point where they were ready to sign a contract or whatever, but you had like thought that you could have been converting into a FaZe player over the years? Was it like quite a few?
No. I think it was the only one that we could have gotten and really wanted to get, and it didn't happen, was probably Alex. Outside of that, the only time we had an opportunity was after the Berlin major, but we didn't go that way. Team wise, like the players and myself didn't go that way. That's why I said I think that was, in hindsight, probably the one mistake we did make. But after that, when you look at it, we started playing better at the start of this year, so there was no need to change things yet, to force the change. If by some miracle a really good in-game leader would become available, then maybe we would discuss it within the lineup and say, okay, can we like get this guy somehow? Maybe even us going for a 6-man roster, right? Something along those lines. But there weren't really that. There just weren't in-game leaders available. That's why we were really vocal when about the Alex move last summer, because he is a blue chip player who's won tier 1 tournaments with his team on LAN. Individually, he's solid. And also for our own game and how we would distribute the positions within the team, we could make it work. So it's just this was what we didn't see for a year and a half, and now it becomes available, like it becomes something that we can go for, and it just like didn't materialize. So that was pretty disappointing for us in that sense.
Sure. Striker Prof, you got anything to do with this?
If Striker doesn't have anything, then when thinking about like this whole situation, this is obviously like you can't undo the past, and some of these, like the way these things are explained, the way you explain them, to me everything makes sense. And like the things that I heard behind the scenes, some of them, like everything adds up to why you didn't pick up like Aleksib. Is like, maybe I don't know exactly what was told, but some people talk. NiKo played with Alu in the past, right, with FaZe, so maybe they talked about him as an in-game leader at that time. Maybe Alu undervalued. I mean, surely even if you ask him today, anyone in Nets, I'm sure they'll say that they undervalued Aleksib and what he brought to the team and stuff like that. But if we want to kind of take something and learn from it, like how can a team avoid these mistakes? Because if we look at maybe some other teams and the way they approach, let's say, signing players and stuff like that, it is more of a maybe top-down approach. And the responsibility and the decision in the end isn't on NiKo. I mean, you'll always ask your players what they think, but it's not like anyone would have a say in that decision, right? And it would be either your responsibility that you didn't pick him up, Aleksib for this example, or it would be like no one's else, right? And then you could replace the coach and say, okay, this guy fucked up, and now we moved on. And these situations, it's this kind of weird aura where people say, oh, it's NiKo's fault, and someone else is going to say it's Janko's fault, but maybe it's Rain's fault. Maybe Rain was like, fuck this guy, I don't want to play with him. How do teams avoid this situation in the future?
They avoid it by having, I believe in the top-down structure, right? Like, I believe in, there's a team of players, I'm their coach, they listen to me and to what I say to them. They don't argue. I don't need to explain myself to them. I answer to the org, right? I had to explain myself to the org, right? And the org makes the decisions. Like, they're the ones who pay the salaries. They're the ones who own the team, right? If the org is dissatisfied with the results, they're going to come to me. Obviously, they're going to talk to the players as well. And if they decide that I'm the main reason for our performance, they're going to fire me, and I'm going to lose my job. For me, this is the most normal thing in the world. If I'm dissatisfied with the player's performance and I try working with him to improve and nothing happens, I'm going to go to the org and say, this guy is not good enough for the team anymore. He needs to be replaced. As simple as that. Like, that's the dynamic in my mind that should exist in any team, in any esport, right? So when it came to that, it sometimes is a matter of things being a bit too fluid, I guess, for a lack of a better word, and just kind of being, okay, how do we want to proceed with this? We want this guy, we want that guy. And to be honest, like, it's different when you have players who are, big names in a sense, and this isn't like to mean it in a bad way, but you can't just bring anyone and he's gonna tell, Cold, Olof Meister, and NiKo what to do if these guys are not gonna have faith in him and the way he wants to do things, and if they don't respect him as a player, right? Like, that was a little bit of a problem, not like the big issue, but it happened a little bit with Neo at times, in a sense of, not because everyone loved Neo. Neo is a great guy. He's with Rain the best teammate that I've been around, in Counter-Strike. But just stylistically, some of the things in terms of calling and in terms of style, you know, when there were some disagreements with that, like if you can't like work that out so everyone's on the same page, like that, you can't just that player is not gonna make sense for your team. And that's why you need to discuss it with the players, at least to some extent, unless the situation within the team and with the org is already in a sense where the players are aware they don't have any say in anything. Like if I tell you you're gonna play tomorrow with Prof and Chad, you're just gonna be all right.
God damn,
Are we
that's
pulling
rough.
together or not? You know,
Why'd you do that to someone?
no, but it's just like, and I feel that it is getting a little bit like that in some of the orgs. You think like if you asked all the Vitality players, you want to switch players between maps, like I think they would all be, yeah, that sounds great. No, probably not. They would probably all say that's stupid. Like let's change it from match to match, like a full match, right? Who knows? I'm just talking out of my ass here, but that's why they don't get to have a say in it. You know, players are not, no matter how good a player is, he doesn't know everything about everything. Just CS or team management, you know, just because you're good at the game doesn't mean you know how to do everything else when it comes to managing a team, leading a team, or whatever it is, right? So, and I think orgs have realized that a while back, and that's why we've had changes for the past 2-3 years in that sense. We're seeing them every day now almost with some of these teams, and I think that's also helped elevate the scene, the level of Counter-Strike and everything else.
This is probably slightly off topic, but fuck it. Do you think that you got fucked by both of the teams that you joined having members who are considered legends of the game at one point? Like that you were just going into a place where like you had stubborn mules that were stuck in their ways from the way it used to be when they were the best?
Not as much as some of the other things. Like it was definitely a factor, and also no one forced me to, you know, accept the job.
Sure.
But I think it was some other things. As I said, if a player is, for example, you're talking about like established, if a player is past his prime and he's not what he used to be, like he, in my opinion, why would I keep him around? You know, and there were some instances where a player was removed, and some instances where a player was kept, or like, you know, like I wasn't around long enough to make some of the changes that I want to make to the roster, right? But for me, that's not a situation that can keep happening, right? Like if you're too stubborn, you don't want to work with me, like either you or me are not going to be here, and I'm fine with that. If the org comes in and says, hey, well, he's this guy, you know, like I'm sorry, but we have to let you go. Okay, you know, I can go somewhere else, I can do something else. I just like at times it was just feeling that you don't either have all the tools, or you're not really in a position, you're not really put in a position where you can actually do what you want to do to an extent, and just really have fun with it. I think I knew a question like this was coming. I was thinking about it, and it's like whenever we won a couple of tournaments, there was too many, but when we would lift a trophy, I didn't feel happy, I just felt relieved. You know, like the feeling I felt was relief, because it's like this is what, you know, we were expected to do, we finally did it. Like, but you know, I was aware it has to be more than this for us to really, you know, justify the lineup, you know, what our fans expect for us, the name of the org, and all of that stuff. I think it was only if we were able to be consistent would I actually feel happy about the results. But that's just like the way it is. The pressure is constant, and it's a result-based environment. So if you don't get results, you know, everything else is just secondary, really.
It's much easier to get in front of a camera and just talk. Like the time it's
You
like,
don't win or lose.
Yeah,
it's always you always
yeah.
get paid at the end. So
Skin in the game is definitely a term that counts a lot here. Yeah.
From when I talked to NiKo, you know, from between his movement to from FaZe to G2 or after it, rather, it was pretty obvious that that kind of the community pressure really got to him and kept, you know, piling up until he kind of blew up and pretty much said, "Fuck it, I'm just gonna go join up with Hunter." Right? How was this impacting you personally? Did you feel the same way, or did you manage to keep it aside?
I mean, I think it was negligible for me. I learned a long time ago that it's better to just cut out all the noise and the negative comments, and even more so when I started coaching, because with all due respect, no one except the 5 players and the coach knows what's going on within the team, knows why you lost a game or won a game. Like, even the most knowledgeable people out there, Chad, for example, he only has so much information. He just sees what goes on, sees what goes on the server. He doesn't know the communication, the plan going into the game, the preparation we did. Did some player forget what I told him 5 times? And we lost the reset round and we lost a 16-14 game. You don't know that. You don't know how many times, this happened or that happened, which all these things contributed to the results we ended up having, right? So that's why, people are always saying, oh, and most, it's just like people lose money on gambling or whatever it is, and they just say like really mean things to you on the internet. Like, if I was going to be concerned with this, I've grown a lot thicker skin than that over the time. But NiKo is younger, and the thing with NiKo is also he's so competitive, and he knows also, like, he's also aware of the reasons why things are going the way they are, and he's taking the brunt of the heat. And I've always believed in, and I like to believe that about myself, that I'm a person who's accountable, and takes responsibility for his action and performance and all of that. And I believe if a team is to be the best in the world, the players need to hold each other accountable. And some of the players did that, and some of the players didn't. And one were taking more heat than the other. And no matter how many times I tried to explain to him, just don't read the comments, turn off your mentions. Like, what are you gonna gain from reading, Pussy Slayer 99 writing you a comment like, you suck, your T side is shit, like, go back to mouse sports. This is gonna help you. This is gonna help us win tomorrow. How? Like, not at all. So I think he did allow it also to an extent. I think it's his fault a little bit as well that he allowed it to affect him as much as he did. But I think it also sucks, for FaZe fans everywhere, that NiKo is not in FaZe anymore. Like, I think people really don't understand how valuable he is to any team out there. And I'm just, for me, it just sucks that everyone's gonna connect this with, oh, they're really good friends, they know each other for a long time. But like, I think it's going to be pretty obvious in the near future with results and so forth, and just overall performance, like how much NiKo can actually mean to a team, if it isn't already to people.
Sure. All right. I think what we're going to do now, JaCkz, is go into your best and worst memories with FaZe, and we'll cap off that discussion. Then we'll get into some of the recent news.
Best. You obviously have to say just lifting trophies, right? Winning the 2 big BLAST events after a little bit of tumultuous periods both times. That's just a great. There's nothing like lifting a trophy when you're competing, especially BLAST. Always great arena. A great tournament to attend, and the medals. I'm telling you, the medals are probably the most fun part about it. Worst memory, this whole, when COVID started, like this whole period, the first part of this year, the season, that just like has been really just mentally torture. And some of the stuff that was going on and so on is just something that I'm probably going to try and forget as fast as possible.
All right. Well, that's a nice way to leave it off there. I'm sure we're going to ask some more questions once we make it to playtime. But Lucas, let's play the bumper and let's get into the recent news. All right, welcome back. We are back, and we're going to get stuck into this recent news. Now, if you were paying attention last night to the social medias, some shit was going down with old mates FURIA. Now, we just had Art on the show last week, and it felt like everything was honky dory. Everything was going well. That's what that
Had
means.
a lot of good words for Henny.
Yeah, heard a lot of great stuff.
Like
And-
the only player he actually talked about on his team was Henny. Like Henny's so good. Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah. He talks about Vinny smiling, I guess, and I think it was around
Both of them are
6 p.m.
out now.
Yeah, it was apparently like so during the final yesterday. This news hits that apparently they're seeking a replacement for Henny. It's not to do with anything in the server, and I'd be surprised if it was because well, he's been playing fantastically for the team this year. Now I'm not quite sure what the validity is behind this, but apparently they were setting their sights on Junior, but they were talking about the fact that they wanted to add a 6-man anyway. But Prof, what do you make of this when you were reading the news or even writing the news?
Yeah, from the Henny thing, from what I read was mostly, as you said, like out of server thing, and it seemed like it was something that happened. It's not like a continuous. From what I felt was like when Art was on the show, things were okay, and then something happened. That's how I read this. And of course, they can't really pick up just any player now because they're in Europe bootcamp and have 3 events: BLAST, DreamHack, and IM Global Challenge coming up. And travel is obviously kind of tricky.
Yep.
Yeah. So Junior as a replacement to someone like a up and coming North American player, Opper, good stats, like beat Liquid like 2 days ago and everything. But yeah, even if they come back to North America to play there, it's hard to get a Brazilian to travel to North America and get a visa, from what I understand now, especially because of like Trump changing stuff and then COVID and everything's super hard. So that's kind of what they're looking at now. I think that's where they stand. But there also have been reports from like Brazilian outlets that Vinny was also considered being replaced, or they pick up someone else, and then Vinny maybe becomes the 6th player before the Henny situation was unfolding. And the player was Zeppa from Chaos, which makes everything even more amusing.
More fucky. But the manager, sorry, not the manager, the founder and the co-CEO of FURIA made a tweet in Portuguese last night. And now I'm going to link this to Lucas to bring this up for everybody. But you're going to have to translate it, Lucas. But I'll read it now and you guys can get it on screen just so I'm not bullshitting. But this
Please
is...
read it in Portuguese.
He says, as everyone already knows, we're looking for an extra player for our squad, but this has nothing to do with Henny. Besides being my personal friend, we are happy with him at FURIA, and as long as the feeling is mutual, we can't think otherwise. Now,
that doesn't mean anything.
I know it doesn't, and I know that there's a lot of times where these like owners of teams come out and say shit, and then like a week or 2 weeks later, what we all were reported and rumored on anyway, like it came to fruition. But I'm having a hard time in working out how Henny goes from being this, like it felt like since he had moved away from the party boy crew, he was fitting in quite well with the what to me looks like the nice boy crew in FURIA, right? Yeah, like I'm not trying to, this is just looking from face value, right? Now, JaCkz, you're where they are. You're in the same part of the world. Have you been keeping your eyes and keeping your ear to maybe a couple of bouncers at the clubs you used to go to? I don't know what the fuck's open, but my point here is Lucas is over there now. Lucas is over there now. The twin brothers there. K and G's there now. We get the party crew back. Like, what's going on? You got any rumors for us?
Well, usually I would say no comment because it's not the shit you would talk about. Like, even if like I knew everything. But actually, I'm gonna talk about it because like people have been like super normal about it. Like,
Sure.
I think they went out. It was Cole's birthday one night on a weekend. They went out like together for that. Outside of that, during the summer, whenever they were here, they didn't go out at all. Like it was only if they had like a completely off day, one day, like or something along those lines, which also wasn't, very often. It was like, you're there for 45 days, once every 10 days, 2 weeks, you have an off day. So that's usually when they would go for a team meal or something. And then whoever wants to go out can go out. Who wants to do something else, they can do something else. So there wasn't anything out of the ordinary or out of the norm, at least for me, in that sense.
Okay. So, Striker, you think there's
I
validity?
can tell you
like-
who drinks what if you want, though. I don't
No,
know
that's
that.
all right. We don't want to hear about the gin and tonics. And look, I'm sure that a few of them love a good cocktail, but Striker, when you look at this news and you look at the what I just posed as a circumstance, right? Do you think it has anything to do with that? Like, we're completely speculating here, but this just seems so out of the fucking blue.
I literally just the show with Regin kind of popped in my head, which is when we talked about the Hooded situation and Mad Lions and like the sudden movement of it. And the Regin's response to that was like, did he do something bad with somebody's sister? Like, this is kind of like the same vibe that I'm getting from this. Like, this
I
is
think
so
John
sudden and-
actually
Maybe
tweeted
maybe
that
that's
as
okay.
well.
Maybe that's okay in Denmark, but I don't know. That's not a cool joke in either Serbia or Brazil. I wouldn't fuck around with that, man.
I'm just saying that that's what popped into my head. I'm not saying that
I think it's
that's what
just like
happened there.
ridiculous how much people are that this is like legitimately that people think this is a topic. Like, I think it's being blown way out of proportion, because the only difference is that it's being more on social media maybe lately or with some players or teams than in general, and that also has some of its reasons. But like just because someone isn't posting stuff on social media doesn't mean they're not going out on their free time or doing anything, and that people would actually believe this is something that is hindering a team because they have like two players. Like, it's for me it's ridiculous. Every team that is even close to being professional, there's clear rules within the team, clear rules even from the organization in terms of things like alcohol, obviously, not to mention drugs or anything like that, right? Because now I feel like I have to mention everything because of people out there. Like, obviously, a lot of things are out of the question at tournaments. It's in any amount while competing and all along those lines. When you are working, which means when practice is a work day, right? Also, you can't go to work in a bank drunk or hungover, right? So, like, I feel like I need to say this publicly. Like, I didn't really address it, but.
What about stoned? You didn't say anything about can you practice while you're high?
Also for you, Prof, that doesn't count as drugs. Okay, good to know where you stand.
I mean, you didn't disclose. You said you needed to disclose everything. That's like in the middle ground.
Yeah,
falls
you
under the
caught me
category
there.
of
We were high all the time, man. Like, I was,
Janko
half of our
stoned
games,
24/7.
like all the games, like we won was when we were like sober, and we were losing because we were high all the time.
The funny
There
thing
you
is,
go.
like, probably it would be the
Worst
other
thing
way
is now
around.
some BBC like quoting this. It's gonna be like, hey, let's close. No, disclaimer. This is all
Ex-coach
just
of FaZe
jokes.
Clan.
Just jokes. Like, there's no substances of any kind being consumed.
All right, what about this
So-
angle then? How about this angle? Let me try another one then. What about the angle that obviously this new MIBR roster is being formed, and maybe KNG wants to keep Lucas, and maybe the Twins want to reunite. They made it to a major grand final together, the three of them. Like, maybe they want a six-man because VSM can't play majors. I'm really just spitballing here because I got nothing on why this is happening.
That's different, but that's also we come back to the thing we were talking about. Like, who cares what KNG wants? So it's
True.
like it's what MIBR wants to do. This was the first good thing they did with their
That's
lineup
right, yeah.
in like 2 years, or I don't know, like whatever, in a long time, right?
Since
Like,
I was there.
it created some. It created some like hype around the orgs. Like, I don't know, you guys know this because you work within the industry. Like, the MIBR games are the most watched games all the time, and Navi coming in like at a close second. When one of those two teams plays, your viewership is gonna go up by like probably a couple 100%. So it's like you should just keep working towards that. He says, "Oh, I want to play with my friends." Yeah, here you go. You're fired, and you can play with them for free. Or go back to
Go
King Kong
matchmaking.
and play with them for I don't know what, right? And we're gonna get someone else, just like we did these three guys, right? And we started playing way better because we got people who are hungry and appreciate or whatever, like So it's up to the org.
Like, the real question is, like, what the fuck happens with FURIA now? Because Kenny was the perfect fit, it seems like, for how they wanted to play. And where does Kenny end up? Like, if his English is fine, like, I would actually love to see him on Liquid as the opper. I think that would be a fucking great move. But on the other hand, if it is a out of game issue that is going to be an issue in Liquid, that I don't know if they want to pick him up. But some of these things, like, people have out of game issues, then they go to another team and those issues disappear. So maybe sometimes it's worth a try.
I don't know. Well, we got to wait and see, right? We don't know if anything's actually going to come of this. It's just some reports right now. We'll probably check in again with it next Monday, and we'll have more information then. But they do have events. There's one starting for them tomorrow, right? So it's just, let's see what type of version of FURIA steps into the server, and we can start speculating more on that. We probably will dive a bit more into talking about Junior and those prospects later, because we will be talking about IEM. And Triumph made it to the grand final. Don't fucking ask me how, guys. Wait till I go on my rant, because that one's going to be a fun one. But let's move into this whole Emmy to play with GODSENT. We already talked about this a couple times, didn't we?
I mean, I mostly put it in because of Yanko, so
Sure,
maybe.
This is perfect. Go.
Yeah.
Aren't you guys friends?
Serbian.
No, I'm kidding. No, we used to play together as well before.
Good or
Yeah,
bad
yeah,
move, Yanko?
Tough to tell. Like, it's another sign of how hard it is to get an in-game leader out there. You know, that they got a player that was
I don't know why
removed.
Azad didn't want to join, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I didn't see in the news that he was like asked in decline or something like that. I don't know.
I
what
told him
is
to
it.
go there. I guess he didn't want to.
That would have made a lot of sense for him and them as well. But what I know about Abby is that, like, he understands what this means to him, like what sort of an opportunity it is, that he's like doing everything in his power to make the team better and to earn his spot to stay there long term. I'm not really sure what the reason is, although you can probably pinpoint it to maybe lack of fragging and on Crystal's part, or just like maybe dying too much unnecessarily. But they have been improving bit by bit, so they probably felt like it was maybe going a little bit too slow to their liking, and that they needed to make a change. And ME is capable of, I believe, putting more give more fragging to the team, but we'll see how everything goes. It's a great chance for him to prove his worth and show people that he can still play on that level.
Which show did we talk about this on, Prof? Was it the one we missed with Striker?
I think it was the
last
one
last
that I
week
was on.
start.
So let's do this, because we brought this up, Striker. I want to get your thoughts on this, because we've spoken about Farley a bit on this show, right? And he's
Sure.
come into this roster and he hasn't performed to the level. It hasn't been great. It hasn't been bad. It's just been middle of the pack, and he looked like a star AWPer, right? Now, Makalele before wasn't operating to a high level within the system that they had, and some of those issues were him not liking to AWP on maps like Nuke and Vertigo. But do you think it could have something to do with the system as to why we're not seeing Farley shine, or just the fact that now he's actually playing against good teams on a regular basis?
I mean, it could be the latter easily. Obviously, like, he's never played in this kind of a level, especially with Copenhagen Flames, where he came from. So it could definitely have to do with that. And to be honest, he's not, like you said, he's not actually doing a bad job. He's still being a star in quite a lot of matches, to be fair. So I just think it is really just a difference of level, because he is being used very differently compared to Makalele, who, like you say, was opping weirdly on some maps, being way too passive, not going for entries,
Or not
and things like that, or not opping at all.
Which is worse.
While Farley is pretty clearly a different scenario, where he is being a bit more active, and obviously is being an opper on every single map that he plays. So I don't think it has anything to do with the system that's being put in. I think they're using him actually quite well.
Okay, and the next GODSENT match is tomorrow. No, not tomorrow. Yes, Wednesday. So we'll get to see then how it looks. Not too long for that one. Let's keep moving forward with this. We're going to talk a little bit North American Counter-Strike.
That still exists?
Yeah, unfortunately. But that's how Jason keeps his job.
Okay?
So, well, soon, because that's what's going to happen, right? Because Chaos and the New England Whalers are apparently looking to split from the organization and teams, part ways. Now, Prof, I didn't read into the news heavily on this. Is this an org dumping them, or is this them leaving to look for other options?
More like a dumping thing.
Okay,
I think
so this
for
one
the
stings
Whalers,
a bit more.
For the Whalers situation, I think they said like the parent company is in bad situation money wise because COVID. So
makes sense.
So they're like, what can we cut instantly that's doing the least for us? Oh, that CS team over there, those guys are cut. So unlucky for those guys. And then the Chaos one is just a report so far, but it's also the same. It's like,
Well, the coach tweeted, right, saying that like there's a team who's in the top 20 with the average age of 21 or some shit. Like,
yeah, I mean, yeah, it's more or less, it's confirmed, I guess, but it's not like publicly confirmed officially from the team. The Whalers thing is like officially the team just came out and said like, fuck it, we don't have money anymore.
Okay.
So yeah, the Chaos one is, it looks like potentially the Chaos org wants to explore Valorant, and they are just gonna swap to that, and then maybe if the team wants to swap over, then they can. I don't know. I don't know what the exact future is gonna be for those guys, but it sucks pretty much because they are the like literally the next step underneath the teams that we know, right?
I feel like we're going to move into a world, Janko, where Counter-Strike is football in Europe and Valorant is the NFL in North America. Like,
that will suck, Chad, because like NFL is far superior to soccer. But yeah,
well,
keep going.
I think look, do you think that North America, as far, because I've heard some stuff like from pretty legitimate sources that like EG at one point in this year were considering dropping their team, or things were getting quite difficult over there, and I like Liquid is probably the only mainstay, and now that Cloud9's gone international, like where the fuck are North America going to get any backing from? It seems like it's kind of doom and gloom.
I think it's not so much to the orgs as it is to the lack of talent. There's a reason why NA teams in normal circumstance come to Europe all the time to boot camp. It's because there's way more teams in EU in terms of tier 2, tier 3, even tier 4 teams, which are good enough for you to be able to scream a couple of maps against them. Whilst in NA, which was way more obvious when COVID hit, is like you have a couple of teams you're practicing, which you're also obviously going to play in tournaments, and you can only play a team on a map so many times before practicing becomes pointless because you both know each other so well. And I think it's the lack of those lower tier teams and players coming in through whatever it is, like ESCA opens and then mains and all this stuff coming up. And we had, like as you said, like Chaos, a couple of these teams, Triumph, who came up lately, and that's the I think that's the flow. It's been more or less the same in NA over the years. There hasn't been 5 teams showing up in 1 year or something like that. It's been like a team or two every now and then, and then or a player gets picked off by some of the big names, and then they get someone else and they try to stay afloat. So these are like New England Whalers. Like, okay. So, but Cloud9 gets a European team, someone else might come in and get the Chaos team. If Chaos comes out, maybe another org, NA org, or doesn't even have to be an EU org picking NA players.
FPX maybe
as well. Yeah, they're also looking for a team too. So I think the bigger problem is that the players, like new players coming up, they're gonna go with Valorant probably, or some other game. Call of Duty, is a huge thing in NA, probably not as much as in Europe. So that's the thing. Like they have a bit more options there, more variety, and Counter-Strike probably isn't the sexiest FPS in NA like it is in Europe, right? Like FPL, ESCA, Rank S, right? It doesn't attract as many people as probably are now playing matchmaking in Valorant, or even maybe in, I don't know, COD or Overwatch is that for years now. So
yeah, that was dead before it started. So yeah. Look, Striker, with the doom and gloom that Janko's kind of posting there,
you're asking me for something positive in return.
No, I don't want anything positive.
My middle name.
I was gonna ask, like, do you see this as something that is like we're not going to see North America return to the, like, let's look, 2019 was the golden year for North American Counter-Strike maybe ever. Liquid and EG operating at very high capacity. I think if they continued that through this year and FURIA was able to climb and this new MOBR was born, like, I know I'm including 2 South American teams in the region, but that's where they live and compete. We had Genji looking as like a pretty decent third string, 100 Thieves backing a team, obviously Australian heavy, but from the same region. Most of those names that I have just listed there have either been completely fucking unraveled for one reason or another. Like North America being competitive going forward is completely fucked. So if you're an EG and a Liquid and you have to spend all your time in Europe, like there's now no room for the upcoming players to develop because they can't even play against the best from the region. So do you like if you were
it's not even just that, it's also that the obviously the support is going away. So sure, they can play, but it's going to be amateur essentially. They're not going to be getting paid, and so they're going to look for opportunities elsewhere. It's just going to logically lead to let them even more people from NA leaving to Valorant, because that's where the money is at this point in the region. So I think North America is pretty fucked at this point. I don't know how they get out of this.
That's what I was going to ask you. I'm going to say, do you think we can fix it? I'm going to say we. I just mean
I honestly don't think so.
So
actually, look at it from this perspective. Like all of these orgs coming in, it's always the same. Like it's let's put all in this money into a team. 1 year later, it's like, what is this? We didn't monetize. We can't afford this team. This is complete bullshit. Like it's the same thing is going to happen with a lot of orgs that went to Valorant now. Like they are not going to be profitable, and then they're going to leave the team. Then it's going to be like these CSGO teams are super cheap because there are no CSGO teams currently. And then the cycle will continue as it did with Overwatch League, Call of Duty League, whatever the fuck, right?
I can't comment about like the EG stuff, Chad. Like I didn't hear like any of that stuff. They're probably the only tier 1 org that in NA that you're looking at and saying that they were considering maybe dropping their team. Like it's been only tier. Well, like they, the first time they wanted to get into CS was a fiasco. Like second time around, they didn't stick around for long. So I was gonna say, like, you look at an org like Cloud9, like they're committed to CS, obviously, right?
Yeah.
Like they're one of the biggest orgs in the world, especially in NA. Liquid, same thing. I would put EG close into that boat almost. Like they haven't been as big as around or for a long time, for as much time. But some of these lower tier orgs, just like the players, like they need to try this move to get there. Like now when everything is like everyone, the playing field is pretty much level, because they are hoping by doing this and maybe getting a good lineup and kicking off like really strong, they can become the next EG, like Liquid, in terms of as an organization, right? So therefore also like some of these players that I've heard like early on moving to Valorant, it's like, wow, great. Like JaCkz, we're really gonna miss you, dude. Like it's been awesome having you around. Like no one cares. Like go and try to be like
round of the major, never forget.
Right, try to be like great for you. Like go around and try to be like a pro there. Like he was never gonna become a player on any of these like teams. His short tenure on Cloud9 was like horrible. So it's like these are not like sure. This is what I was surprised by the Nitro move, like because he was an in-game leader, he could have gone wherever he wanted. So that's like a bit, but maybe he's just thinking ahead of the curve and he wants to prolong his career. I don't know. Like people, have different trains of thought. But I think like now that I remember Nitro, that was the one that you're like, But other than that, it's just like kind of still great player, but he's hampered by the Valve thing, and for him as well, it makes sense. So that was like a loss that the scene felt. An in-game leader, like so. It's a couple of those, but the majority ones are not too big of a deal.
But the problem is that the biggest teams are just going to be in Europe for most of the time that they can be, especially like as long as we are in this period when COVID is. So there's not going to be big enough tournaments in North America to support all these lower tier teams, and there's not going to be enough support from an organizational perspective now. So I think we're only going to see worse and worse in terms of players leaving to Valorant, and it's going to be some players that we actually do care about.
Yeah, look, this is one of those things. It's another, not wait and see, but it's going to be like dribs and drabs, right? It's probably going to get whittled down over time, and then we do end up getting the merge of some of these the triumphs and the chaoses and the whalers, right? And then hopefully there's some organization that can hold on, at least be a feeder for the top teams that we're talking about, so there can be a chance, because it's going to be a shame to not have any new players coming through that region, at least being developed. And some of these kids are going to enjoy Counter-Strike more than they enjoy Valorant, right? And some of them are going to prioritize that over the money. And some of them are probably going to get banned for match fixing. But that's a story for another time too. Let's keep this moving.
Still waiting.
Still waiting, yeah. Still waiting for the new coach ban wave as well.
ASIC owing us a lot, living on board time until we go down to Australia and knock on the fucking offices.
Maybe
Canvas
wait
the
till the
files.
borders open first, so that's going to take some time too. But let's keep it going because it's some more North
Get your mom on
American
the
news.
case.
Mate, you can't go to Melbourne where they are. I think so. They're locked
Oh
down.
yeah, you're
still.
actually
Still
locked
locked
out.
down.
Like in terms, never mind.
Yeah, so we'll keep them in their own little place for a little while. But we need to talk about more of this COVID stuff because we've just heard from EG today that they will not be traveling to Europe for Blast, and they will not be now participating in. This is like breaking news. It broke like an hour ago or whatever that they've been replaced by Cloud9 in the DreamHack Masters event. So that's
kind of bullshit, to be honest. Like, why the fuck? I mean,
well,
how does Cloud9 get invited there?
Well, like, let's just use like for 1 second here, and let's not use
our
rankings.
brain.
Let's just go with. Actually, didn't Cloud9 in ESL's world rankings jump up to something ridiculous like 19th?
No way.
They're 152. And
Okay, no. Okay, so yeah, they've jumped up to 19 in the ESL world rankings.
What?
What the fuck?
Yeah, look.
Because they have points from players, right? That's how it works.
JaCkz, they all have points, right? So, I don't know. That's just.
I mean, Tag has a bunch of points, right?
Yeah.
From Astralis, he won one tournament, top 4 on another tournament. So
Toxic also,
with mouse sports.
Alex probably has some
What's
left over.
their rate? Their ranking on HLTV is like
152.
152s.
Now
sounds legit.
Now let's keep in mind that there's a couple of reasons here as to why you probably pick Cloud9 for your event. One's like there's still a bit of hype, residual hype, even though it didn't go,
that's all cool, but like.
Oh, I know.
I get it.
They're
To be
invitational.
honest.
I'm playing devil's advocate right now.
You can have the invitational, but this is like DreamHack Masters with all of the best fucking teams.
Was Fnatic there? Was there a news I missed or something?
It just came out while we were live.
No. Why Fnatic is not in it?
No Navi either.
Fnatic is probably
they probably just declined or
Flashpoint maybe.
Maybe it's
Fnatic is Flashpoint, but there's no.
Yeah, there's no Mad Lions. There's no Big. They're all in Flashpoint.
I guess like Navi declined. I guess I don't know.
Maybe
Navi
should be.
Sorry for cutting you off.
No, that's where were you going with this, Prof?
I don't know what I was. No, I just made my point about.
If it was someone else and not Prof,
I wanted to say that like all of these other teams have the fucking endpoints of the world that went to the close qualifier and I don't know lost to Gambit in overtime. I'm just making up now stuff, but it doesn't matter. Like people are working hard, and then someone comes in with the Cloud9 logo and gets invited. But obviously, as we said, it's down to the ranking, which I think, like in this case, we see how fucking ridiculous it is that they're ranked 19th based on individual players being good. But obviously, as we saw in Flashpoint, the team at the moment is not good, and they're not 19th in the world based on their play whatsoever.
They are 19th and 18th is Virtus Pro, if that adds any context for people at home. But
Chat,
yeah.
Like I have a question for you. Why isn't Masters included in the global challenge? Like why aren't the invites being handed out?
Close.
I mean,
if it's because
close for what?
Too close to the global challenge.
And but how would it change? Like,
well, I mean, originally it was LAN, right? And it would have been a problem if there was like a last minute team coming in through
of course,
the
that makes sense.
Masters.
And then 2 weeks ago, you decided it was going to be online, and then you changed it. So you had one more tournament, so you have like more reference points for.
Sure.
I guess the only thing I can guess is like some teams already declined, maybe playing Masters, knowing it's not going to count into the points for the global challenge. So then you would feel like, well, we can't like now shift everything around. So that I can understand. But other than that, it's just like I thought it was all, especially Masters, like a big part of the Pro Tour as well.
I think they just stuck with their original deadline, which all the teams would be announced on the 23rd, and a large percentage of the teams were based off their world rankings, as opposed they were only handing out a certain amount of direct qualification slots, right? IEM Beijing was one for North America and Europe. We also had
New York Fall and DreamHack Open Fall.
Yeah,
New York NA.
Yeah, New York NA. That's where FURIA qualified, but not EU. And DreamHack Open Fall. So
a guy in chat has a amazing message. He says,
Yeah.
dude, there's 3 NA spots in Global Challenge. There's barely even 3 NA teams anymore.
Yeah, that's true. But this is the thing, right? Like the idea.
There's
a
3
couple
NA
of months
teams, and
ago-
Liquid is not one of them. Shout out to my friend Jason. Love
Oh
you, Jason.
dear. I can't wait to talk about the
You're
North
not even in a
American
team, man. You're
games.
not in a position to say that.
No, he can now. Now he can say whatever the fuck
say
he
whatever
wants.
the fuck I want.
Fair.
That's
Okay,
why
fair
I'm
enough.
here.
Fair
I
enough, man.
declined
Fair
while I was coach.
But we got to button this one up. EG's not coming, right? Now, I want to give 3 possible scenarios, all of which are quite nefarious, and I probably shouldn't, but let's go with it anyway. Fuck, I've forgotten my 3 scenarios. I can't just start.
One of
and
them
then
is
not go
lineup
with it.
change. Another one is what?
No, it's like worse than that, right? Because they're
Okay.
saying COVID's. They're saying because of COVID.
Yeah,
but,
I mean, but when does an org say everything, right?
But I know. But let's think about this, because Liquid are able to go, right? So both teams have players from North America and Canada, if I am remembering correctly. Liquid have a facility that they're going to, which is great for them.
In Netherlands.
I don't
in
know.
the EU, which is way more strict. Like I was
They need
checking
visas,
this out.
right?
I had the same thought as you. I was checking like to try to find on our government website because EG was here already.
Yeah.
For the last trip, like if they added some measures, and I didn't find any. So for like
what are the
for
measures?
NA, well, if they added some, there weren't any, and there's still we don't still have
There's
any.
still none.
And then Serbia would never not let a Brazilian into our country, right? So, like, yeah, I think it's just like it's an easy way out for them, but maybe it's just, I don't know what, like
Well,
just waiting it out, not wanting to stay there for too long because then they would have to stay all the way until Global Challenge was over, right?
Well, they actually have recently just experienced what the travel procedure is like, right? So maybe the team, I don't know if they're even going to like rock up for the Global Challenge. Let's assume worst case, they don't come to Europe at all for the rest of the year. Then you can look at a couple of reasons there. Well, one, they don't want to get quarantined for Christmas, which and 2, maybe they got sick and they don't want to risk it again. You have 3 that the third one could be a lot of different reasons, right? That there is actually restrictions that they can't get over here. But the talk a couple of months ago, let's be honest, let's level the shit here for a second. We're all living in the same world, right? A couple of months ago, when we came out of summer in Europe, everything was kind of, I don't want to say feeling normal because I'd be lying, but everything was like looking up. It was like, oh, people are out doing normal shit. Like
pretty normal over here, Chad.
Yeah, okay. You're lucky fucking you, mate. Jesus. But now it quickly went from, okay, things are looking up. Maybe we can have like lands. Maybe life can go back to normal. People are going out having meals. You just distance. You got some stupid fucking plastic things up between you. You're staying away from cunts. You're not coughing on them. You're wearing masks. You're washing your hands. You're getting dry. Now you have to moisturize. Anyway, it was starting to look up. We're all thinking,
staying away from cunts. As usual for everyone watching
things
this show, right?
Things were looking good. And then, right, winter happened. And now, like where I am in Germany, for example, we're looking at, it's like 20,000 new cases a day. And the world just quickly went from, oh shit, it might be all right, to, oh shit, we fucked up and we overestimated this whole situation. Now, I don't want to get into talking about like the nature of COVID and whether we should be scared or shouldn't be scared or what. The world's fucked at the moment, right? And the point that I'm making here is maybe when we were optimistic about North American teams coming to Europe, that they were the same, right? Maybe they've just gone, we don't want to leave home during this time. The world's so in flux at the moment. Anything, it could be as simple as that, right? I'm kind of hoping it's.
How the fuck is any of this nefarious, by the way?
I was gonna say, you know, maybe there's some more dodgy stuff, you know, going on, but I can't be fucked. I'd have to make up a couple stories
related to that. You have the whole Obo situation, right? Which sucks for Complexity. They started doing really well, so there's your like proof of concept for that. And I think anyone who was thinking like, oh, after the summer, like things are gonna get better in the autumn, like that person is delusional or just naive. Like the normal flu season comes then. So obviously this shit's gonna pick up again. I mean, I think everyone would probably expect it to be even worse, which it is in terms of like the number of cases, but at least now people know more about it. So like they have more
next year land
data
in the summer. Player break in March and I don't know, some shit later, September, and that's it.
We might get away with it then.
We do it all in some like beachy locations. Malta.
Beachy? Beachy.
Well,
Avicii?
you know where we
Rip.
could go? We all need to get visas for Australia, and we could just stay there where it
Forever.
rains. Yeah, we never leave, and we
I
could
stay
play
there
all the
forever.
events from there. I guarantee you have a good time.
Well,
Any-
we'd have to be all in one city because if we're on the different coasts, we're also fucked. So
Yeah, we're high ping. Everyone come to Perth. You'll love it. I'll make sure. And nothing has been more normal there. Like I cannot tell. I still have.
World
some
in a
friends,
global pandemic, everyone's losing their minds.
let's
Perth's
all go to
normal.
Chad's
Australia.
hometown, it's never been as normal
Nothing
here
has changed.
as it is now.
Nothing has changed. They just locked down the whole state and said nobody can come in for 8 months, and so everything's normal. Like my friends in Down Under still go
It
out.
does
wearing-
help when you live on an island, Chad.
Yeah.
Like, it is easier to do it on an island than it is when you're connected with all the other countries.
And the Australian government is really good at dealing with boat people anyway, so we're prepared to make sure nobody came into the country. They're really fucked about it. It's actually quite sad. So anyway, let's keep moving forward. We're going to talk about IEM. We're going to talk about IEM Beijing that just happened over the weekend, and the final was Vitality versus NAVI. Simple versus Zywoo, that whole storyline. One of the keys was obviously the six-man Navira being there in a best-of-5 final. I think a lot of people would say that helps a lot. But let's get into that discussion. And I wouldn't mind starting with you, JaCkz, obviously with your hands-on experience recently. What do you make of this whole six-man situation that Vitality are pulling off?
For me, it was a bit weird how they like just almost a little bit out of nowhere jumped into it, and then instantly, like very quickly, since the VR started like being on the server in practice and all this stuff, they were slotting him in maps. And if I remember correctly, it was mostly Dust 2, like he was playing at the beginning, and that makes sense. You know, you look at G2 for example as well, right? With this Amanek JaCkz thing, like when Amanek is playing on Nuke, Nex is playing ramp. When JaCkz is playing ramp, and JaCkz is holding ramp better than Nex is, for example. So if this was like you're playing a team loves to go ramp, for this game you can do it that way. But I think Vitality as an org is doing a great job all around, and I think they realized that results matter, but the whole situation is fucked anyway. Like if there was ever a time we can experiment with this shit, it's now. And still you need to still do it online, like, and do this stuff and see how it's gonna how things are gonna happen there, how players are gonna behave and all of this stuff. But at least now it's doable, right? Like it's not just some idea that was ludicrous and you could just throw it out of the window. Like you won a tournament doing this, right? Like you won in the final, you're changing players on 2 different maps, like second map and fourth map of the series. So props to them. I think they did a great job as an org. Props to the players, like reverse sweeping NAVI. It's simple being on form. It was a weird final though, like not one close map. I mean, 16-12 didn't really feel super close. So yeah, it's just kind of deflating for best of 5 3-2. You would think like I don't know what happened, but
it wasn't
unfortunate.
There were some good rounds, but like overall, it wasn't like
no cyber rounds, man, were insane. Like I didn't watch everything live, but I saw that, and that stuff is just like, if you were cheating, you couldn't do that. Like so like that kid's just next level. And I don't know what you think, Chad. I like that was being thrown out, like calling him the game. Like the kid's born on the day the game was released. Like I think you could throw that in.
That could work. Yeah, I'll throw that one to Alex. He's more with that. I just fucking
and the hashtag
talk about the money or some shit. But I think we've seen them pull it off and now finally get a grand final under their belt, Prof. You have to sit there and think, okay, well, all the hard work's paid off, and they've even done it with what some people might consider a higher difficulty level because of the way they've had to practice and make all that work. And but a best of 5 final with a 6th man, it almost sounds dreamy because fatigue is one of the things that's going to set in after 6-7 hours of Counter-Strike, right? Do you think this is something that should be allowed now that we've seen it, how it operates?
I put out just like a joke tweet, and people of course did get upset, even though it's an obvious joke tweet about like the 6-man being in best of 5s being unfair. I mean, it's not unfair. Like everyone can do it. Obviously, it's not unfair when all teams have access to it. And at least in Navi situation, they have players in their fucking academy that they could use for this. So it's not like it's playing like my team from Croatia that has like €200 budget against G2 or some shit. That in this case, it really wasn't unfair, but it was is a factor that I don't like. Like it's a factor about best of 5s that I don't like in general, that it is like fatigue comes into something that usually doesn't come into it, because all of the other games are best of 3 or best of 1. And then you have this thing that one team can potentially offset the fatigue with using like an extra player, which I think it must have helped. Like, try playing 5 matchmaking games in a row. Like, you're not gonna feel like super good after that. And then you have like 1 game off in the middle to chill a bit, come back on, like for JaCkz or misutaaa or whatever, and just come in with a fresh mindset. I think that definitely helps. It is a thing, but as you said, you had to do the groundwork and have a player that the 6th player is fucking good, as Nivera is. I think he was the 3rd highest rated player in the tournament. Of course, played like 6 maps or something, but like a 125 rating or something behind Simple and ZywOo. So not every team is going to have that luxury to say. So I don't know. The conclusion is that I don't like it. Overall, I feel it just introduces something weird.
Sure.
And yeah, until all teams kind of put in the same work and have that, it's going to be like, I don't know, like Vitality is going to have like a small bonus in best of 5 finals, but only in best of 5 finals. So what does that mean? It's just a weird thing to quantify for me.
Do you think, Striker, it had an impact on the final?
You're asking the wrong person, man. I wasn't here for the last 5 days. I didn't
Fuck,
even see
threw
the
you under
final.
the bus there. That's right. You were casting. My bad. All right. Well, let me swing that your way then, JaCkz. Do you think it had an effect on the outcome of the final? The fact that they had that?
No, not really. And I think if you even ask NAVI, I don't think they would say I think they would say the same thing. It's just like one of those things that could maybe be frustrating a little bit more than anyone else, probably for the coach, maybe the in-game leader, in terms of it makes it more difficult to prepare.
Yeah.
But once you know that it's a possibility, you just add just adds like shit you need to do. Like, you just add a couple of more maps you need to watch with these different players to see if anything changes significantly, and then you can see that in one map. Oh, they're still doing the same stuff as T. This guy is just taking each other's spot, and CT, he's playing the same side. So you're just like, okay, this guy plays better the map. Nothing changes with the team in itself. Like, maybe the player has a slightly different tendencies in terms of the angles he's holding on the side and stuff like that. But in my experience, it's not like hugely game changing or anything like that.
So I'm getting Lucas to bring up Nivera's stats for, just whack him up whenever, for just Beijing. Now, he obviously played Blast with them as well. And going into this, before those NAVI results, I put the Blast frags and the maps Heroic, Mad Lions, and Spirit, you can see there, and I just added them all together and just averaged it out with, I think it was 7 maps played, and it was an average of 22 kills per map. And you can see here with the performances on D2 and Inferno, he's hit that mark. Now, like, you can attest to this, Strike. You don't have to watch the counter show with this, but to have a man to be able to step in to do this seems like a bit of an anomaly, right? That you can have someone to come in and perform it at this level, especially against some of the best teams in the world.
Yeah, I mean, especially if it's somebody who doesn't actually have any experience at the top level.
Yeah,
and he's just came in and actually performed. So from that, I feel like obviously Vitality did their scouting well, and they brought in the right player, clearly, from what they've shown so far. But still, to pull this off is incredibly difficult.
I think, I want to ask you guys as well, is like, what do you think that Vitality would be better just using Nivera all the time? Like, from what I saw from him,
Instead of
I
misutaaa,
think if you put him in instead of misutaaa, he'd probably deliver on every map.
That is.
And overall, Vitality would be better.
It could be a plan for the long term. It's just a way to ease him into the lineup, right? To see if he's actually better or not, right? So,
but he's also playing instead of JaCkz, so that's the
I think part. It's also, you get a lot of information just looking at what's on the screen right now, right? So it's like 4 Infernos, 1 Dust 2. So put this in this context. Like, imagine if you had a guy like Fur just for Overpass, right?
Sure.
Like, he could just play Overpass for you. Like, obviously, for people who like don't know, like, historically it's been one of Fur's best maps. Like, obviously on CT side, his aggression is infamous at this point. So maybe it is one of those things where for now he's a specialist. Like, I know the way they play at times, like JaCkz overpass T side, that he can like have a lot of impact when he's on point, right? So maybe sometimes that's not something where you want to put him out of the game. I don't know if they've changed him on that map as well, but at times it can also be a way to motivate the player, a kick in the butt and say, okay, like we can do this without you. So like we know you are better on, objectively, but if you're not gonna do what it takes and not get on with the program, like there's this guy, he'll do it instead of you.
Lucas, I'm sending you Misuta's stats now as well. So the conversation point, Prof, that you're bringing up regarding that, I think you and I both had the same thought regarding that Australia series. So when Lucas brings this up, you'll see there was an Australia series on the 23rd of October, and that was a big win for Vitality, if we're being honest. And Misutaaa had some really good impact. Now, Dust 2 is the one where he actually had the higher of the ratings there, but he gets subbed out on that now. But that aside, like, I think before this, there was obviously a lot of pressure on the kid, right? He's another rookie. Like, let's be honest, this kid was picked up from a YouTube fucking frag video, basically. And what he's been able to contribute to the team, sure, like he had that game where he got 0 kills on Dust 2, and obviously he has to play Dust 2 B site, whatever. But you look at some of these ratings, like in the final against Navi on Inferno, he has a good rating. Like he against Mad Lions, there's a good game in there. Against Spirit, there's a good game, and he's starting to become more and more comfortable. He's obviously a mechanically skilled player. I just think that he's another one who probably needs a bit more, grooming before he's going to be comfortable in these big matches. So I guess the question, would they be better overall if they just had Navira in the whole time? From what we've seen from Navira, if you are going to get those same performances out of him across the entire map pool, then yeah, there'd be no argument. But I guess there's no way
to know that,
right?
My only argument is that most of the time, like whenever I checked to see, like when I thought, let's say for I did not check for first stats on maps, but whenever I thought about like, oh, this guy is so good on this map, and I went to check the stats, they're like negligibly different on maps. So, like if his average rating is 108, his best map's going to be like a 109 rating, and the worst is going to be like a 105. So overall, like things just transferred well across maps for most players. So that is just my small argument why I think it would work.
I mean, Nivera is more experienced than misutaaa. Like you guys, like misutaaa came straight from it. He didn't play for like a single team, like proper team, like with any experience. They just brought up like, this is the next hot shit in France. Let's go. Like Nivera wasn't a thing then. Like Maka wasn't either. Maybe they would get some of them at the time, but it's like, a guy like that, it's gonna take a lot of time for him to get used to this level of play, competitive play first, then tier 1 competitive play, team play of any kind, like all this stuff. So I think at start, yeah, it didn't look great, but anyone understood like you have to give him time. And I think the point was like he was doing the job he was there for, and that's all you could ask for him. And with time, you're hoping you can mold him and he can become maybe hopefully the next superstar or the secondary star after ZywOo, right? But that's also, stuff like that takes time. Same with Bimas, for example, right? Like he was in my team for a little bit, never played like for a competitive team, right? Like they never competed, let alone on such high of a level, let alone playing with players on his team that he did, right? So, and you could see like flashes then with Mouse, like he's getting more consistency, he's being put in the roles he's supposed to play and so on. And I'm sure in some time, again, this, he still has to go to lands. Misutaaa attended sometimes. Like he has to go to a land, he has to have the nerves there. Like, he's gonna shit the bed probably the first couple of times, and that's normal. Like you need to expect that when you bring a player like that in, and just, you can't go to him after that bad and be like, why are you playing so bad? It's like, yeah, it's the first time I'm here. It's always gonna feel weird. So you always need to remember that when we're talking about these players.
I wonder if Vitality are just simply trying to bridge some weaknesses that they have on those two maps. Are they actually playing 1-for-1 in terms of like shocks for Nivera and then misutaaa for Nivera on those two maps?
Yeah.
I mean the positions.
Well, their positions have
positionally.
changed. Their positions have changed a lot. Inferno's the best one to talk about here because what they've done is they've moved ZywOo from the Arch player on Inferno to the B site, and now he's the solo B player. Apex just sets him up. They leave ZywOo B. He's always at least getting you 1 or probably 2 kills. Apex gets to float around, you know, full in-game leader mode, just ready to help wherever he thinks the gaps are and shit. They park the tank towards pit. They have misutaaa over there with him.
Makes sense.
And then Navira's AWPing arch side. And the kid, every round, without a doubt, will go for that like safe mid pick for the guys swinging wide. Like he was confident. Like, and the setup, their CT side, like just seeing it work makes so much more sense, because I remember watching old Vitality, and like JaCkz always has ants in his pants, right? So that cunt's fucking moving around all the time. He wants to be activated. ZywOo's rotating heavy over to B because RPK and Apex are struggling to get like a even trade on the site. He's always cheating over early, so there's like an arch gap. Now it's like the CT hold makes a shitload of sense. And like I think that's another key when you think about misutaaa being plugged on out for Navira on the B bomb side of Dust too. That one is a 1-for-1, but Navira will pick up the secondary AWP. And
Instead of JaCkz.
yes, but they play spawn based. So if ZywOo gets the long spawn, he'll take the long spawn. If Navira gets the long spawn, he'll take the long spawn. The other one goes mid to B, right? So like they legitimately were doing that in the final. So like they've clearly got a good plan. Like the coach JaCkz has a big brain on him here to be making these key changes and making them work this quickly. So it makes sense. And I think that the longevity of this that I like is the fact that eventually there probably will be a roster change. Like, let's say that RPK is like, yeah, fuck it, I'm done. Or JaCkz is like, yeah, I've had enough counters right now. I'm going to have a couple kids and settle down or whatever, right? They've already got a 5-man roster still, and they can make it work. And I think having that 6th man, if teams are going to use it in this capacity, is actually really good, because you're not going to find yourself in the position JaCkz found himself in with FaZe a million fucking times, where somebody steps down to the bench or somebody walks away and you're like, what the fuck do we do? Like now, at least you've got somebody who understands the communication, gets the dynamic of the team, is already implemented into the system and that whole mindset already, and away you go. And then you pick up the next guy and then you integrate him and you can keep that system going. So I think this as a maneuver, and you bang on, Janko, like this is the best time to experiment. It's the best time to do this kind of stuff with the whole COVID period. But do we want to talk more about Vitality, or do we want to talk a bit about NAVI?
I mean, it is definitely time. It is time.
It's time.
Can I just say something?
Yeah.
I just quickly was rifling through like stats on individual maps for misutaaa, just checking if he's any different, because what you were saying, Prof, earlier. He has so much of a better rating on Vertigo. Like, it's unreal. It's 1.09 off 16 maps, right, on Vertigo. Literally everything else I checked is 0.95.
Okay, yeah, his average is like below 1.
Yeah, every other map is like way under 1, or not way, but like a bunch under 1.
That is a kind of an outlier.
Curious thing. Vertigo is so much better compared to everything else in him.
New kid, new map.
I just want to end like this on one note. Is like it's not, most of the time it's not even about like stats, unless it's a severe like drop down. Like sometimes it's just about like this guy on this map is a better lurker, right? Like he has a feeling for the timings better, and you know, you don't even need to get kills. You just need to be dangerous, create space. Maybe he's better on the CT side with communicating, right? Like maybe he's a better rotator, like stuff like that. It doesn't always have to be, you know, he's fragging a little bit better than the other guy. That's the reason why we put it in. It can just be, you know, a bunch of other things which the team feels like, you know, very closely because they see it every day.
Sure. All right. Well, now a team that we need to talk about those details with. And Lucas, I've thrown you the IEM stats for the event, the 5 players, and of course you're going to see Simple at the top of the charts here. He had another blinder on the first 2 maps that they played in that series. And then I want to say he tapered off, because he tapered off from that form that he set at the start of the series, right? He was playing great Counter-Strike, but then the team kind of completely capitulated after they were up 2-0. Now, they were already suffered a reverse sweep with a map advantage to Astralis in that EPL Grand Final where Esatag was playing. So that's still pretty recent that they've dropped 2 series like that.
Did you see Blade's tweet? It's like, another loss from O2. This is becoming dangerous. Something like that.
Jesus.
Of course, it's the classic like Russian thinking translated, which just sounds off. But I was like, yeah, it's definitely not good. Definitely not a good trend for you guys.
Well, when you watch this final, Prof, and you saw that just change from the first two maps and then going into Overpass, where it was like a 12-3 first half from Vitality. Like, what did you make of this? Were you just like, oh, okay, we're in for one of these days, or did you feel like Navi were choking, or what did you pick up?
I don't know even what to put it down. Like when I looked at the stats of the game, then I saw like the perfecto difference, which on the first two maps I definitely saw him play well.
Yes.
And he was the second highest rated player on both whatever the maps were, Dust 2 and Nuke, right? And you could see it on just his impact on the server. And similar to like what misutaaa has been going through, like perfecto has been rising in form and finding more like confidence to make plays and like hitting that like second shots where he would usually just like get one and die. So that's a difference. I don't know like why he dropped off, but that's the only thing that I saw that was like a big difference. And Simple as well wasn't on the level he was on the first two maps, which is like insane level. And then you have the I don't know how to call them, but like Flamey and Boomich, those two. I want to see like definitely not deadly duo, but like whatever is the inverse of that, like the very the friendly duo for the enemies. Like those guys were not playing well. That was not well.
When JaCkz, when you've played against Navi, or you've watched Navi, or you're doing the demo watching and stuff, what are some of the biggest flaws that you see with this team, just when you're looking at it from that perspective, without bringing in the fact that this team obviously has the tendency still to fucking tilt and kind of, I don't want to say, I think at certain points in the game that they kind of just shy away from the moment because they don't want to upset Big Daddy Simple. Because I can imagine that he's quite the player to play with when shit's not going great.
I think some of it may be some of the players individually have tendencies that you can exploit strategically, right? Like maybe holding same positions too often or using some of the setups too much, or for example, they always rotate the same way when a certain thing happens on the map. Or T side, yeah, sometimes maybe a bit too slow, but this is like sounding there's not some glaring gaps that you abuse, right? And they're always a dangerous team because of their like low buys, and they still do this thing where Boomich will drop an AK to Simple in an eco round, the rest will just have pistols, so they're half buying, right? And they're like maybe swinging cat, but then all of a sudden like this guy shows up with the AK, he trades you, and now you're in a 4v4. They have the side bomb planted and AK on Simple, right? Like that's not an easy round to retake, for example. So I think they are solid. The difficult thing for Navi is we're so good right until everything moved to online. Like they're the last tournament, they just stomped everyone. And the players, that we are pointing out play better individually in that tournament as well.
Yeah.
So they're like, yeah, like obviously this guy is struggling and underperforming for we don't know for which reasons. You remember how many clutches he was winning during that time, right? As well, he was one of the guys with the most clutches at the time. So it's like it's hard for them to justify making a change and hard for them to justify not making a change. It all depends, like where do they pinpoint, for how long this is going to be going on and how much patience they have for some of these results or some of these losses, better to say, because the results, like losing two finals, being second, it's a good result in the end, but the way you lose, it's tough, knowing that you could have won it fairly cleanly if you just played a little bit better in some crucial moments. So for them, it's like it would be a hard call. If I was in Blade spot or the org spot, like it would be a difficult call to make on the spot, knowing like what you had before everything went to shit.
But it's also the criticism like about them finishing second. It's the same with Vitality finishing second. You have fucking Simple, you have ZywOo. Finishing second is not really an amazing feat, especially when you probably can upgrade some of the other players. It's not like it's impossible to conceive of an upgrade for like a Flamey. I think that's probably the easiest thing that you can think of right now as a player, as anyone that watches CS. Like and he has been there for quite some time. So it's not
He's
like
the longest standing member.
yes. So it's not like, oh, he's someone that came in like perfecto or something, so maybe we need to give him time. Like, you gave him everything, obviously, except the like star roles. He doesn't have like he has some like supportive bitchy roles on the team, but the performance has been very consistently not up to the level of Navi, I would say.
He's definitely inconsistent, right? I don't think anybody could argue that, because Katowice, he's fucking railing everybody, and some games online he has fantastic aim, and then the next he's looking like he can't hit the broadside of a barn. So there's obviously like those kind of issues for Flamey, but I kind of see like the JaCkz side of things of, yeah, they're making it to these finals. Like what more do we want from them, right? And obviously I think that a lot of people...
to be fair, just to cut you off, like they also had some really bad, like, you know, they wouldn't make it out group stages in some, and also they played all these major tournaments. They played only within the CIS, so they had actually less contests with the best teams in Europe, right? So then, you know, it could go either way. Maybe they would have played better against, you know, those opponents. Maybe they would have done even worse. So that's a bit of an asterisk, like to them.
I think that some of the issues with it that they've cited is some problems that I'm sure like Fnatic felt, and I'm sure you guys at FaZe felt as well, was like that whole shift and like, oh, it's hard to be motivated. And that was at the start of the year. But like there was I feel like there's been a tone shift recently from a lot of these teams. Like for Heroic and those kind of squads who are on the up and up, like they were getting real fired up with online games. But now I'm watching like the Astralis cams and they're getting fired up and frustrated. I'm watching the NAVI cams, like Simple's looking hyper invested and shit, and the rest of the boys are the same. So it feels like now we've shifted away from the, oh, you know, this is just another online tournament, so there's a lot on the line. But this is where we come down to the whole conversation point with NAVI of when they're on and they're all on, they can be the best team in the world, but they're not all on enough of the time. And I was so baffled with some of the calling that I saw, and I obviously don't know who's making the calls. Like, I'm sure that Simple overrides Boomage all the time. Like, I would say that happens in that team constantly, right? Simple probably has the freedom to say and do whatever the fuck he wants, and I would say he's earned that, but that's not cohesive for a whole team relationship. But some of these Mirage calls, like, there was a round where I think it was like a 3-on-3, or maybe it was even a 4-on-3 in their favor. And like JaCkz had an AWP on A site. Electronic was pinned down in connector, and JaCkz is just watching him for fucking, it felt like forever. And then eventually JaCkz gets the kill. So now they know JaCkz is over towards A. RPK was playing Cat, and I'm pretty sure that ZywOo was B. So RPK gets a kill, and actually it was a 5-on-3. And now they know where RPK is and JaCkz is, but they still don't move, right? They still don't move because they're still trying to work out where the fuck ZywOo is. And then they start moving. Simple starts running towards A. Then he stops for some reason, goes back down connector, then starts going back down. Then JaCkz just kills him on the cross from A ramp. And then that's the round over. They sat there for 40 seconds doing nothing.
That's the round that was like, after that was over on Mirage. That was like 10-8 or something like that. That was like still open. And then they just ran out of time, and Vitality closed it out. And it's not that they ran out of time because they like were waiting for something. Like,
they did nothing.
It felt like then one guy was literally in B apps while everything was happening. Like, he was literally ready to go out B. It seems like he was ready to go out B. So as you said, maybe it was a call that someone said like, oh no, let's do this, let's do that. And then they just got lost. Right.
We could probably hop on Navi all night, boys. Do we have anything that we think here is valuable, or do we want to get talking about G2?
There's a lot of talk, like if they should use someone from the academy team to like come in. Do you think that makes sense?
One round. He stood in for one round during EPL, I think, or 2 rounds or something like that. He's their highest rated player.
Cool. Academy. What's your insight, Sponge? How is it looking?
He did good for those 2 rounds. I think he got a kill, and it was a headshot.
You can't get to Navi is like, you know, whatever FaZe of CIS or Liquid of CIS, however you want to call it, in a sense of they're also aiming for #1 or bust, right? So probably not an academy player, but more like someone from maybe Force or something like that. That's again just like they did with Perfecto. It's more like getting, if they're gonna make a change, they need to bring in someone like that, unless they're really like feeling good about some kid on their academy team that he is like really ballsy because of the things I mentioned, not because of skill, but because of going through the steps of like getting to play on the tier 1 stage.
It just seems difficult for them though, because we know that they've tried, but they haven't been able to in the past. Before they got Perfecto, there was like a whole lot of other players that they were aiming for, and they clearly weren't able to get them. So I think there's some difficulty just like getting them out of their contracts there.
I reckon JaCkz would be like if they could get JaCkz from Spirit, that's probably not a bad chat. A lot of people would probably say Mia, but I think Mia would have a lot of overlap with somebody like
JaCkz still
Electronic.
needs to play on LAN.
Okay, all right,
He needs to prove himself on LAN. That's the problem.
all right, that makes sense. I guess
I swear I've seen
Perfecto
it.
had
I swear
the
I've seen
Slammic
it
gaming
somewhere.
stuff.
He
Like a bunch
played
of times.
He played
Malta
something,
LAN,
but
then not a big one, right?
Didn't he play something bigger?
I don't think so. We're like 10 minutes until 2 hours.
Yeah, I
and,
see that.
Okay, he didn't. You're right.
It's going quick tonight. Who would have thought? Fuck it. Let's keep moving forward from NAVI. Let's get into this G2 situation with JaCkz. If you guys missed it, we'll catch you up. So at BLAST the week before, if you completely missed it, NiKo joined G2. There you go. Then it's amanek and JaCkz are still both on the roster.
What
Working
happened?
out who
Literally the biggest move of the year.
It's crazy, man. It all went down. NiKo and Hunter, the cousins, united. Anyway, amanek and JaCkz are still on the roster. That's the biggest talking point right here. And amanek played with them during Blast. They topped their group. They beat Astralis. They looked good. JaCkz came in for this one at IEM Beijing, and they looked okay. It was a bit shaky in the early stages. Then they made it to the playoffs. They were lucky to get faced up against FaZe. Obviously, that was a great storyline for us there. But then when they played against NAVI in the semis, they just got completely outclassed. Like it didn't look all that competitive, especially on that final map. I think they were just when the camera changed to Nexo every time, it just was the face of bewilderment. Like, what the fuck can we do? Now, this is a pretty good debut with a brand new roster, you'd say, right, Striker? I know you didn't get to watch too much of the Counter-Strike, but just with the result itself, they should be happy with that.
I mean, sure, that's in terms of NiKo for sure, but what the fuck is happening elsewhere, right? That's the problem.
There's a lot of overlap, like Janko was talking about previously, with like Nexa playing ramp when amanek's in the team and some of those positions being changed around. Janko, do you think there's any chance that they try and do like a 6-man roster like Vitality did now that it's been successful?
I'm not sure. I think they could go for that, but I'm not really sure if it's going to be these two guys, like both amanek and JaCkz, right? Like maybe they want to get someone, a different type of a player to be the 6th player. Maybe someone who's a little bit more versatile, like being able to play more roles. But I think what they're doing is fine. That they probably weren't sure themselves how do they want to set everything up. So they were like, okay, first tournament amanek, second tournament JaCkz. Let's see how it goes with each of the guys. Some roles, depending on who played, they changed. Some stuff remained the same, no matter whether it was JaCkz or amanek. So yeah, I guess in the end they're going to make a decision who is the long-term 5th, and maybe if the other guy is going to be kept around and given chances here and there, or something along those lines.
Which one makes more sense to you, Janko? Because I think here a lot of us were saying amanek.
I love JaCkz, but I think amanek just feel like he can do more things, right? And with the way from the games that I've seen, the things that JaCkz was playing, it's like he wasn't really like on T side. He was left lurking at times. Like he wasn't really as part of the group as he was when NiKo wasn't on the lineup. So I feel like amanek is way more suited to play that role. Even though JaCkz, I know he's a great teammate, he's a great guy, and all of this stuff. But I think amanek is just more, as I said, just more versatile and a better fit for the rest of the squad.
I'm pretty sure you're leaning towards JaCkz, but now you're just like, yeah, I'm pretty sure everyone was going for amanek, right?
I was about to say follow through with the JaCkz point here, because one of the reasons that I thought that JaCkz would be more likely is what he brings to the team in terms of personality, and like just being like a fun-loving guy and probably keeping up a good mood. Which I think, obviously I haven't really seen amanek in the same way. JaCkz is obviously quite not over the top, but it's easy to see that he's that type of a guy. Amanek could be that type of guy. But I think from what I saw, like I feel like JaCkz is taking up too much space that should be Hunter's and NiKo's, right? Like I feel like he there were some rounds where they sent him into A on Dust 2 first up cat, and he'd get some entry kills. So he was just like sent in to probably be a martyr just to get one and died, but he would go in and just crack open the bomb site. So sometimes it looked really good. Other times, like when he was playing upper dark as the guy just defaulting there, I didn't feel it was a good position for him. Maybe it could become a good position for him. I don't know.
I think it's a similar thing to like Vitality, misutaaa, and Nivera for me. Like if Nivera didn't exist, like super fun, like misutaaa is playing okay. Like there's no big issue here. Same thing with JaCkz. Like if Amanek was just bought out or just like did not exist, like you wouldn't say like JaCkz is a bad fit. Like he like this is an awful situation. He needs to be kicked or something. But now that you see Amanek and JaCkz, you're like Amanek just fits better. That's my feeling.
I just brought up JaCkz's stats page. That there's a lot of red here.
Statistically, it's not even like there is literally
It's not a
nothing.
discussion.
JaCkz did better than Amanek statistically. Like literally no stat.
Okay. Well, if we're going to use the numbers, then
Headshot percentage actually, but
I wanted
That
to
doesn't
ask you
count.
what you thought about this, Prof. Now, I saw that there was a tweet from Pimp after the final yesterday.
must be a good one. He always JaCkz always has some good tweets.
Let me find it. There's a bit of scrolling to do here. He said something. It was about Kenny. Wait, did he delete the tweet? Where is it? Where is it?
Probably
Surely
not
it's still
after the
here.
final. Probably when they lost, that was the semifinal, right? G2.
Oh, yeah, but I should still be able to. Here it is. Here it is. It was on the 21st. Okay, here it goes. I'm going to read it for everybody at home. So he says, Kenny
Can you
is
do
missing...
it with a pimp voice, please?
No, I can't. That's very disrespectful, Prof. I think you need to be more professional on this show. All right. Anyway, Kenny S is missing so many of. Fuck, I'm going to have to. He fucked up a bit with the English language. Sorry, JaCkz. Kenny S is missing so many shots you'd expect a top AWP player to hit these last couple of weeks. He's always been good at the tough ones, though, but imagine a hybrid between the consistency there's going to be of Guardian used to show and the flashiness of Kenny S. Oh well, it's just a dream. Now,
Isn't this just the story of Kenny S though?
Well, but that's the thing. I wanted to ask, Prof, did you like? Because obviously the camera's not on him all the time, right? The obs is, but did you think that like there is a Kenny S underperformance on the AWP? I noticed him rifling a lot more. Like, do you think there's any?
I mean, not that much this event, but overall, still yes. Like in the Navi game, I feel like definitely overall, like in some of the matches before, he was pretty good, but the Navi game definitely he was missing. He was missing on the server and missing some key shots.
Yeah.
Overall, when you look at him and you look at the stats, all players will get good kills most of the time. You really have to be bad or playing some weird combination on the op to not get like a 0.9 rating in a bad game. If you ask me, like when a supportive rifle is going to have like a 0.6 or something for the same level of performance and the impact on the match sometimes. Because like, I don't know, like I saw Kenny S like miss one shot and then his teammate dies on the site and then he gets the second shot, but that shot doesn't even matter anymore because they have the bomb site and now Kenny S is traded or he goes and saves or whatever. So
it was CT side of Nuke, right, where he was having the hardest time, but Navi, like they put on like an amazing T side there. So I can't imagine how difficult it must be for an AWPer to play CT side Nuke when the smoke walls are as good as what they are these days. Was it pretty much impossible, Janko, when you guys were playing up against some of those, well-oiled T sides?
No, like it's just about like a lot of times it comes down to you're trying to make a read in freeze time. You can't play against everything, so you just decide we're going to play against this. We think they're going to do. We think they're going to do that, and if you're wrong, right? Like you can't be strong everywhere at the same time. So you just make your reads, you make your guesses. I think with Kenny, the thing that I just personally dislike is like you see the player cam, right, and it's just so much body language that you're not really loving there. Even when it's like it's just highs and lows going all over the place. Like you can see he's like a super emotional player. You feel like he's one of those guys. He gets 3-4 kills in the pistol round, he's gonna have like 20+ kills in the half. But if he whiffs like an easy shot or screws something up, like his mood is gonna go down. And until he has a good round, like it's questionable how much impact he's gonna have for you. And you want to be the best in the world, like you can't have a player who's going to be inconsistent in that sense. The one thing I love about him is like he's really aggressive and at different places at different times, you know, like he's very hard to prepare for because you're just saying, well, he can be anywhere, you know, like he can start anywhere on the map. So in that sense, like you want your opper, even when he's not fragging as much, to still try to find openings, right? But you just need to strike that balance where now you're not just dying every round and hurting your team, right?
Sure.
So I think that's like for Kenny S to reach the next step as a player, he needs to handle his emotions better and try to just kind of level out a bit more, like and have a better mindset during games and just be more calm.
All right. Well, we'll move on from the G2 point because I think we're going to see them again. Are they playing? They're not playing in DreamHack, right? Or are they?
They are.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll see them in DreamHack. That's not too far away, and we'll have an indication of where they're leaning or who they want to try, or if they're going to change things up even more. Then we'll put a pin it until that. We'll quickly talk about FaZe here. The question here is posed: are FaZe looking better without NiKo? They won IEM New York with NiKo. So I think that this is a weird one. You'd kind of have to dissect it a little bit more, wouldn't you say, Prof? You might have to pick certain players maybe looking more comfortable in positions.
I don't know. Like I guess this is more of a question for Janko because we did kind of touch on this last episode.
Well,
that's true.
I think the main thing for people is like this lineup is playing without any pressure. I think in interviews they've been talking about, you know, post game and stuff. It's like, you know, we're just having fun. People have a lot of freedom, like to do whatever they want, and I think that's the environment you want to try and build in every team. Obviously, it's difficult when results are expected from you. There's a lot of pressure. Now there's no pressure on them, right? Obviously, everyone's a competitor, and you want to go as far as you can, but no one is gonna say anything if you don't do really well. You know, your in-game leader left the team. You're trying to figure out who you're gonna replace him with. The coach left as well, and yeah. So I think if anything, it's gonna help Cold a bit that he's in-game leading because he's gonna have to communicate more and talk more and be more active. We've seen Brocky had some amazing games, like just not really worrying about, you know, if he dies, if he's gonna be bad, like just having more freedom going for it, all of having a lot of fun, creating space. Like I think in the games that they won, even in some that they lost, I think all of the players had good moments. Like, you know, the half that Rain had against G2 until they switched and then NiKo decided to turn it into his show. Like usually when Rain had a half like that on Dust 2, like we would just stomp whoever it was on the other side. Like that's how big of a difference he could make by himself on the server. So I think that's the big reason that they've been, you know, Blast wasn't great for them, but that they made the playoffs, I think, was a big thing in Beijing. It was a difficult tournament, and at this point for them, these results are important. So the core of the team is going to stay together, so they don't drop too much in the rankings, right? Like it gets important with the invites and some of this other stuff. So yeah, I think you have to wait to answer the actual question. You have to wait for the actual lineup to show up to really be the judge of like how is the FaZe going to look without NiKo.
Well, that takes us to the next point then, I guess. Here it's got karrigan rumor question mark on the end. Now, do you think there's any validity to this?
Well, I don't see why not. It's public knowledge that both Rain and karrigan enjoy playing with each other, that they had fun playing together. And some of the players that had issues with karrigan are not in the lineup anymore, and I don't just mean NiKo by that. So it's like for them it would make sense. You know, an in-game leader, he's familiar with the players. Wasn't there like, was it just karrigan that the rumor was about, or
potentially someone else from Mousesports as well? But this is like super early talk. So people just went like Robs because obviously the best player in Mousesports. So, but even though I don't think it was really noted.
Well, if they could pull that off, like that team would, you know, be great for FaZe. Like that would be a lineup that, you know, could potentially be really good, could potentially be even better than it was with NiKo, because they could like really set the roles out in a way that would make sense. karrigan would be really good for Brocky, I think, as well. Like he had karrigan, he had Guardian, was more experienced in his first FaZe team, but then he had Voxic, who was in Hellraisers, but then with him, like, he really turned into a superstar. So I think that roster could be really good for them, and it's good that they're taking their time really to just kind of make sure that this next lineup, because ever since I was in the team, there wasn't really a 5-man roster that made 100% sense. So I think that should definitely be their number one priority. Just get 5 players. You look at it, this makes sense.
Okay, now we have just run over the end time of the show here. There's 2 questions I need to ask. First of all, Lucas, are you still awake?
Silence.
Roger
Okay,
that.
he's still awake. Lucas, can you give us 15 more minutes?
Yeah, go ahead. I found
All
some
right.
ice cream, so I'm good.
All right, great. All right, this is good. He's happy now. JaCkz, are you good to hang around for a bit longer?
Yeah, I'm fine.
All right, let's keep it going then. So we're going to transition away from IEM Beijing. That one there, you can go watch the highlights. The Zawi rounds were sick. I think HLTV.org have a video of those there. I legitimately, while they were happening, was so dumbfounded that I didn't make a single noise. It was actually quite mind-blowing to see someone pull that
Pretty
shit
good.
off.
You'll probably just ruin it anyway. So.
Yeah, I kept my mouth shut. Don't worry about it. So we're going to be talking about the talent transitions. Now, this is perfect. We have JaCkz, obviously observer to analyst to coach. You've got me, who's weighing up the option of leaving on the daily. So
Please
what
don't
we...
chat.
No, it's all right. I think it's too late in the year to go for a career change now. So we'll see what happens. But if we want to talk about what has happened, obviously, I just talked about your situation there, JaCkz. We had you move from an analyst position to a coach. We've had Jason do the same thing recently, and both of you have unfortunately went into tough times within the first teams you joined. So who else have we had? We had Cloud9, obviously getting Henry as the GM. Do we have anything else that sticks out from talent moving? Oh, Duncan is what was he doing? He's doing with Guild?
Like a consulting thing,
Okay.
though. I don't think that's on the same level. I don't.
We had a couple of guys in the CIS going back and forth, like Jonta. He was doing like one and the other. Blade was an analyst for a while.
I think LMBT as well.
LMBT as well.
LMBT,
yeah.
Okay,
Look,
so
a lot more there.
I guess when we break those down, we should probably just start with the coaching stuff, JaCkz. Like I wouldn't mind hearing from you when you
Vendetta, yeah, as well.
Who?
Vendetta.
Oh yeah, and XTAZ as well used to be a commentator in the French scene.
Yeah, that is true. Also.
And Kita from.
That's right. He was doing. That's right. He was working for FaZe, right? So when you transitioned to the coaching role, JaCkz, because that's the most common one. Like, what were the biggest things? I know it's some time ago now, but like, was there anything that you remember that stuck out as like the wow, why is this way, or like, oh, this is how this is done? Like, was there anything that stood out in those kind of situations?
Well, I was mostly surprised by, as I'm sure like any fan would be, by at times like lack of professionalism from some of the players to do the most basic stuff. Like show up on time or get enough sleep before showing up to whether it's practice or match day or whatever it is, like paying attention in team meetings when we go through theory and stuff like that. Just like how much babysitting and police work you need to do while coaching a team. I wasn't under any illusion that I was going to come in and just work on strats and everything else is going to work on itself. Like I knew managing the actual personalities was going to be half, if not more, of my job. But some of the things that I had to deal with, I didn't really expect. So over time, like I got used to it, but still you get surprised every now and then by some new things.
So do you think that, like, with this topic we have here, it's pretty broad, but I guess people at home are probably curious if people transitioning from the type of roles that we were talking about, casters, analysts, I could may as well say observers, because that's what Kita was doing, I guess, to roles within these teams. Is there much stuff that like you were able to take that is tangible? Like, do you think that there is a lot to offer? Because like it's something for me, like considering going coaching, right? Like I'm sitting there with the concept of, okay, so I'm going to go in and coach this team. Like for me, I think if I was going to do it, I would need to have like a whole game plan of how I wanted to go in. There'd have to be certain guarantees from the org or from the players of how things were going to function. Because if I just went in and I said, okay, let's start, where the fuck do you start? You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of people with Counter-Strike knowledge, but what do you think it is that people transitioning from these type of positions are able to bring that's different?
Well, absolutely. I think the number one thing was, which is the same for you, like no one has watched more Counter-Strike than me at that point in the last 3 years, right? So it's the same for you now in the last 2 or 3 years. No one has watched, or now it's even 5, right? So no one has watched more CS. So you know everything that teams are doing and what's going on and the main reason why teams are losing it. So first thing is like the in-game knowledge. Second thing is like you have authority, right? Like you have credibility as well. You're publicly talking about it all the time about games, and people know how you talk about, players know from the team, right? So if they accept you coming into the team, you on paper have authority to talk to them, and they need to accept that you're going to say some things that they're not going to like, and they just have to do it that way. But those being the two main things, like other than that, it's also security a little bit and confidence on the side of the org, like that, because usually you have conversations with the org or someone from it, like you do interviews, things like that, where they get a feel for your professionalism, your plan, your ideas moving forward, your style, how do you want to approach things. So I think the number one thing is going to be CS with Jason. Like I would say, obviously he also has an insane amount of knowledge about the game, but he wasn't a pure analyst. He was doing like casting as well. But Jason is, I think everyone will agree, seems more mature, or definitely than me, probably more than you. Like he
He
was
was the
kind of like
maturest in the group.
he was like our dad of the group in a way as well, and he had a lot of interactions with different like organizations, like CEOs of teams, like people coming to him just for advice on roster changes and so on. So I think he was in a sense brought in to make the team more mature as well, like because he could probably manage personalities better than you or me can, right? Like he's probably definitely more patient than you or me are, right? So people can have different qualities, obviously. So it's all also down to what is it that the team is missing, what is it that the team needs at a certain point, and it can be a combination of any of these things.
All right. So Striker, obviously Janko and I are very close to like this whole topic. From like I'm not saying an outsider, but somebody who is a little bit more on the fence looking at these type of changes that you've seen over the years. What is your impression of it? Like, is it something that seems to make sense?
I mean, to be honest, obviously I haven't done it on the same level, but I can speak to the same kind of experience as somebody who's, especially now after this last week, where I focused on local tournaments, like a local tournament only, and the local teams. It's very clear that just by purely watching the games, like watching so much Counter-Strike over the last 3 years, I learned way more than I ever could have while I was playing. And I played for longer than I'm doing this at this point, I think. And so it's pretty clear that that is a big advantage over anybody who plays like by watching and like thinking about the macro of the game and not just like your own perspective. You learn way more about like how the game is supposed to be played and what actually works and what doesn't. And so I don't even have an outsider's perspective, just because I can see how this works, how people are often coming from like the local scene, how people are often coming to me for advice for like how they can improve their game. And it happened to me like fucking 5 different teams almost asked me to coach them like in the last week, just from like listening to me on the analyst desk. So it's just literally through watching the game and like thinking about those kinds of things.
You did use a good word there, like with macro. And it's true, like when me and Chad talk about the game or watch games, like as analysts, like it is macro. But when you're coaching a team, you don't give a shit about like what other teams, unless they're your opponents. Like you only focus on your own team, and then it's the micro, right? So within like what's good, fundamentally sound about the game, and you try to work around that. But if you play 7 Dust 2s in 10 days, like it's better to take long range against pistol, but if your force going long, teams are going to start stacking 4 people long at the start of every round. So you sometimes you add variety, and when Chad is scratching his head, why is the team rushing B against pistols? It's probably because like they've been doing a slow default or forcing long all the time. Sometimes we used to do things just so it shows up on the demo for the next opponent, right? So they think like we might do something. So like it turns on its head a little bit, you see like the other side of the coin when you're just involved with the team and understand like all the stuff you need to think about when you're preparing for a game or building rounds, making strats and all that stuff.
And I have to say, it's much more difficult to actually pull off while you're in the game and like try
Oh,
and
yeah.
do it on the fly. It's so much easier
Right.
when you have like an overview, man.
You
I got
start as
fucking
an analyst,
X-ray.
and you start and you see, okay, oh, they're playing 3-2. I don't know, like they might start for long this round, right?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
they like to do that a lot. So I
Like-
see that on a team, and I'm like, we can't rush long against this team. Like 5 times I have their 4A, right? Like let's just not do it. Better to try fast B split.
I think like a lot of the stuff, like when you're watching, and like now that when I'm doing more of this stuff, especially this year because it's been casting as well, right? We do the interviews, the desk segments, the fucking everything. When you're so eyes on and you're having to call the plays as well, like when you're looking for what is coming with X-ray on and everything like that, and you're monitoring the money, and we've got all these lovely tools built for us and stuff, and I can always go back and jump in and check this literally live. Or you guys at home don't get what we used to back in the day when we watched Counter-Strike, which was the IP. You could watch the game however the fuck you wanted. I have like other tools so I can kind of do that. I could even jump in the IP myself if I wanted to choose how I wanted to watch. So we get like such a perfect seat to watch the game and see how everything's unfolding. So if we did a bad job, we'd be having to probably get fired. I don't know how you could do a bad job really, but my point here is when you're looking at actually, Prof, I want to kind of juxtapose the two here at the moment because we're talking a lot about the coaching stuff, JaCkz, Moses, etc. But what about the Henry G move? Because that one there is with on even a broader scale, right? Because the stuff with the coaching is more in the game and the personalities and dealing with them in a competitive environment. But when you're looking at the Henry G situation, do you think this is something which the personalities might be better tailored for because they already know how to be a personality, and it's part of it is along with building the team is about maybe, I don't know, taking pressure off the players having to be the entertainer, because Henry's doing a great job selling that Cloud9 story, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's doing taking the pressure off the players, though. That's definitely not what he's doing.
Well, I mean, in terms of their media obligations. Let's put it that way.
No, I think they might have enjoyed doing like one or two more interviews than what he did. But there is worth definitely that he brings in as a personality and as just someone that everyone knows literally in the scene, right? All of the players know him, so it's going to be easier for him to probably do some deals, and he's going to be more invested, more open to like doing whatever is needs to be done with sponsor or stuff like that. So maybe it makes more sense from some degree. I think it really depends on the person, right? What are his interests outside of CS? Because if you're someone like, I don't have it, like there has to be someone that's just like only CS, like doesn't care about, like, I don't know, maybe Kassad. He comes to mind, like someone that 90% of his interest is just like CS. So maybe he wouldn't translate to like a GM position. I don't know. I'm just speculating. I don't know how. Maybe he's like reads economy books every day and I don't know, does like table tennis, whatever. I don't know. But yeah, I think that depends on the person to person more than something that we can do like a general sweeping statement on like all analysts or talent.
Well, let's go with this angle, because JaCkz's obviously done the desk work. He's done now the coaching, and I'm sure you've maybe had offers or considered like the GM stuff now, JaCkz, since you've seen Henry make the move, or you've had a bit of downtime. But what at the moment would tickle your fancy the most? What would be the most interesting for you to sink your teeth?
I think the GM job is probably still a couple of years away for me. Like, I think I would still go with coaching or like doing talent work. I was supposed to do Beijing. I'm probably going to end up doing an event or two until the end of the year. And that's the thing, like with talent work, I can always, like do it event to event, and then an offer comes in. There's also option of committing long term, but I'm just like wait and see type of a thing. If there's a really good offer that comes in to coach, and it's an org that I can agree with and like settle the terms with like properly, and it has a proper structure, and the roster is something where I can do a good job with, like I can really help the roster. I'm not putting off coaching indefinitely. Like I'm ready to jump at that opportunity. But if something doesn't come my way that I like, if I get some offers that I'm not really feeling strong about, then yeah, talent work is the other way, like the way for me to go. It's something that I've enjoyed for a long time. You know, working with all of you guys, it's always been a lot of fun. So I mean, that's for me a logical and an obvious choice to make.
Okay, sweet. Yeah.
Can I just ask something? Because I remember talking to you after the MIBR departure, and you were talking a lot about, you know, not being able to impose the structure that you would like on that team, and that basically that your next team would be, or maybe you didn't say it. I don't want to paraphrase something that you didn't say. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but something along the lines of that. Your next team would be one that makes sense structurally and stuff like that, where there would be like a structure set up behind the team. Obviously that didn't happen, and you're kind of coming back to the same issue now, where that didn't happen with FaZe. So just thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think definitely I didn't want to instantly jump into another coaching job. I wanted to take my time, like build a little bit of a playbook as well, educate myself a bit more on just coaching and also like psychology, stuff like that. That were some of the issues that we problems we had. But I'm not gonna say I was pressured. I wasn't pressured. It was just like, come on, let's do it, and so on. So I was like, you know, fuck it, let's just go for it, right? Like if
Yeah.
it's now or never, then I don't want to miss this opportunity, just because like the previous one, they went the other way. So in hindsight, probably another thing like that should have gone the other way. But I think like you know, after 2 times, I'm definitely going to make sure like I've you know, there's been mistakes, but I've also learned from them a lot. So I've gained like an insane amount of experience from these two teams and all the coaching stuff. So yeah, I learned a lot about CS and life in general as well.
Well,
Cool.
I've transitioned us just here, Prof, into the playtime section. Lucas, don't play the bumper. So were there any viewer questions that we had coming over the social media for Janko that we should get
I
in
mean,
here
most
before
of
we
these
close it
things
down?
were about like NiKo, Aleksib, stuff that we covered, right?
Sure.
So there is a good one from JaCkz.
Okay.
As soon as you hear the name, you know it's gonna be a great question. Ask 3 favorite coach quotes.
I don't know. It's been so long that I've
Too many.
Did you unfollow them all?
no, I don't think so. I think the guy just went like kind of inactive on Twitter. I think one that goes from the top of my head because I remember it. It's because for an NFL quote, like, you know, it's something along the lines of, "We will pursue perfection, knowing we can never achieve it, but through that pursuit, we will achieve excellence." Something along those lines. Like that's probably the one like that I remember the most.
There was also a question about like one Twitch clip, if Lucas can bring it up for people. I forgot this happened, but it was kind of recent because Brocky and Colzera on the team. The question was just like, what happened to cause this reaction? Because for people that are listening and not watching, it's from like a Pro League match. You're behind the team. It's like a tactical timeout. You're saying a lot of stuff. Everything looks normal. Then I guess the timeout ends and other people are saying something.
I think this was, I'm not sure if, I think
Your
this
reaction
Mouse
was
took a
like,
timeout. Mouse took a timeout here, I think. And we took a timeout round before this or 2 rounds. And I gave a call. I think what happened was I gave a call for 2 gun rounds, right? We did the first one, we won. And we needed 2 to reset them. And then the next one I gave, and everything's going fine. And the last 5 rounds of freeze time, I think NiKo changed the call into something else, like because he had a read. But he changed it so late, I couldn't even tell him like, please no, you know, like sometimes it happens, like it just, you know, he has a read. And well, usually like we had a good communication on these things. So I think that was the one. The other one that was more popular, it was because like someone didn't plant the bomb. Like he was on the site, like we had this like kind of a fast play to plant the bomb lower and you were going through vents and someone didn't plant the bomb. So I was just like, just plant the bomb, like you smoked off, like please, like you guys wouldn't believe how many times the players are scared of dying, they don't want to plant the fucking bomb. Like there's only 40 seconds after that we need to hold, unless JaCkz is somewhere one before ninja defusing first round of overtime. But yeah, there were a couple of funny moments like that. I'm always like, players can't see me, I'm behind them, but then I'm like, oh yeah, there's a stream as well, so they would see that. Okay, so I need to like calm down a little bit.
Did you win the round that NiKo called?
I don't remember. I think we lost that game like real close again to them. It was overtime.
Someone will go
or
and check.
16-14, yeah.
Other than that, I think we answered like most of the questions. If we don't want to go into some like silly ones, because these ones weren't silly.
I thought those were all the ones you asked.
No, this was Jesus James Christ, as I said, and the other guys was Ventsy something 99.
So that means we already covered all the good content ourselves. We didn't even need the viewer questions. It's basically what Prof's saying. So it's late. It's past Lucas's bedtime for this evening here. Apparently he doesn't sleep once every 3 days, something along those lines. But let's close this one down, JaCkz. I've been letting people take the floor or take the mic and say whatever they want. So is there anything you want to get out in there in the Counter-Strike world?
Not too much. I think just maybe for the people out there, everyone who's criticizing players, all this stuff, like especially fans who are really fans of a certain team and the team is not doing well, I would just tell them to maybe be a little bit more careful with all the hate they're like giving to the players, because some of them are actually affected by it, and it can cause a player that you are really are a fan of like to want to leave your team or something along those lines, and you're like, well I didn't want you to leave, I just want to tell you that you're shit and become better, and then I will tell you how great you are. So yeah, probably something like that, to just maybe let's try to spread the love a bit more, Chad, and be more supportive and kind of cut it down on the hate in these like times there. A lot of guys are struggling, like you see how many people are taking breaks and getting sick leave because of like mental health and because of COVID, and it's rough. Like it's like things have changed, but you're still competing, like you're still under pressure. So any way we can find to help the players alleviate that to some extent, I think we should go for it.
Yeah, I like that message, because the community is a big part of the reason why I quit playing. So thanks, guys. CSGO Lounge.
Well, and you were also shit.
Fuckers.
Yeah.
I was shit.
Except for that one Titan game. But...
That one time, we will never forget that one time.
You will never allow
gonna let us.
Yeah. But
on his tombstone.
Well,
what was the score? 26. 17.
I think it was 27. But the guys who
that's
just
probably how long he'll live as well. Fucking hell.
Already
oh Jesus!
Unfortunately.
All right, so I like that message from JaCkz. Spread the love, guys. It's better if we put positive vibes out in the world. If you feel like you want,
we did not congratulate you for winning Analyst of the Year.
Yeah, well, since JaCkz left, it got real easy.
I'll just say, like, the fact that you won it this year when you literally became a caster says everything about that award.
No, but we were still doing death segments.
That's not fair.
I still had to do death segments, and now next year I can win color commentator of the year. So there you go.
I think also people don't realize how much like Chad does behind the scenes, like with production and preparing the show and everything like that. Is like it was making me feel bad. It's also why I left. Just doing everything like for free.
You'd hate to see it now.
So yeah, I think it's one of the like easiest picks for them for that for this year's awards.
JaCkz in the past, no?
No. I just want the Gosu Gamers one.
This is the first time they did analyst as a category. So it's normally just caster of the year. This time they broke it into color caster, like play-by-play analyst.
There's your answer, Prof.
It wasn't even available.
They just made it up so Sponge could win something.
Basically, they felt bad for me. All right, guys, we're gonna close it down. Let's. Well, I'll say thanks, Prof. Nice.
Seriously, well, congratulations.
Thank you.
You do a decent job.
Now, what do I need to get in here? Next show, we haven't even planned it yet. Are we going to be back next Monday, boys?
I don't know. There's a bunch of matches next Monday. That's the issue, because Flashpoint and DreamHack at the same time. So I don't know how we'll fit it in next week.
Okay, well, we won't announce the next show. We'll work that out. There's no rerun tonight because we're on at a good time. The VOD, Lucas needs to sleep, so expect it out tomorrow afternoon or evening. If you want the audio options, anchor.fm/HLTV. And we'll send you all the updates over social media. Big thanks to JaCkz for coming. It's great to get all this first-hand knowledge. I cannot wait to have him back on the desk so I can pick his brain. And all in all, it's been a good one. So thank you for everybody tuning in. And we'll be back again next time. See you later.